Umi or fried chicken instead? So, the plans for the economy, Labour's plans, seem to have been scuppered with these breaking GDP figures this morning. Rachel Reeves mentioned the word growth 31 times during that infamous budget in October, and it appears we have nothing of the sort.
I know, but these tiny figures, 0.1% each month, we're monitoring them going up or down. I mean, they don't mean anything in terms of ordinary people's take-home pay. I mean, we're looking at long-term trends here. Would you, even if it had been a great budget, would you expect to see growth already?
So how long do we give them? How much goodwill do Labour have left before we start having to mark their cards down?
It's a good question. It's a good question. I just think GDP as a measure overall is not particularly helpful because it doesn't tell you how much money is in your pocket.
GDP per capita. That's what we want.
Well, we'll be discussing that later, I'm sure.
Big show coming up. But first, let's get your news headlines with, is it San Francis today? Tatiana Sanchez. Apologies. Tatiana.
Ben, thank you very much and good morning. The top stories. The UK economy shrank for the second month in a row in October as concerns about the budget continue to weigh on confidence. The Office for National Statistics said output fell 0.1% following the 0.1% decline recorded for the previous month. The figures showed zero growth in the powerhouse services sector, with manufacturing and construction declining at a pace of 0.6% and 0.4% respectively. The ONS says activity had stalled or declined, with pubs, restaurants and retail among sectors reporting weak months. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she was disappointed by the data.
But it's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months. But you'll see from the plans we've been announcing, whether that is the energy reforms we've published today, the reforms to build 1.5 million homes that we published yesterday, the pensions reforms, the creation of a national wealth fund, this government are getting on with the job in improving economic growth and driving up living standards.
In other news, according to reports, an alleged Chinese spy suspected of having links to Prince Andrew has been banned from entering the UK on national security grounds. The man, known only as H6, was found to be a close confidant of the Prince and was reportedly invited to the Duke's birthday celebrations. The Home Office has accused the individual of covert and deceptive activity acting on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. Buckingham Palace has declined to comment at this time. Royal Mail has been fined £10.5 million for missing postal delivery targets. Regulator Ofcom said 74.7% of first-class mail and 92.7% of second-class mail was delivered on time in 2023 and this year, while the targets were 93% and 98.5%. It's the second time Ofcom has fined Royal Mail since the pandemic, and it needs to do much better, according to the regulator in a statement. Ofcom said the company blamed a challenging financial position for its poor performance. And the government has unveiled a clean power action plan to decarbonise the electricity grid by 2030. Number 10 claims the move will protect households from any future energy spikes, boost growth and tackle the climate crisis. Meanwhile, some government-backed researchers have warned Miliband's plans could increase energy bills as people could be forced to pay premium to secure the correct technology. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
Very good morning to you. Hope you're well. Thank you for your company this morning. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Miriam Cates. We're reunited again.
Absolutely.
After, I can't remember, when was the last time? Was it Good Afternoon Britain all those weeks ago?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a while anyway.
Oh, it's nice to see you again. How's your week been?
Yes, good. I enjoyed doing Martin Daubney's show yesterday. I have to say this studio is a lot warmer, so I'm enjoying that this morning.
I know, it's nice and cosy in here, isn't it?
It is
Much
cosy.
nicer.
Yes, exactly. Good for Christmas.
Martin likes that studio very cold in Westminster.
I've heard that.
And it's the bane of my life. When I finish covering his show, my hands are freezing the whole time. So.
I might have had a sneaky radiator.
Oh, did you?
But don't tell him.
Don't tell Ed Miliband that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah, well, exactly. Well, I was adding to the nation's productivity by turning the heating on, I think.
Yeah, good stuff.
Someone's got to.
Someone's got to. Anyway, big 2.5 hours coming up. The top story this morning, of course, is that the UK economy shrunk by 0.1% in October. That's the second month in a row the economy has contracted.
Well, here's what the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, had to say.
But it's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months. But you'll see from the plans we've been announcing, whether that is the energy reforms we've published today, the reforms to build 1.5 million homes that we published yesterday, the pensions reforms, the creation of a national wealth fund, this government are getting on with the job in improving economic growth and driving up living standards.
Well, meanwhile, the shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mel Stride, has placed the blame on this government's autumn budget.
And what this shows is that this government's constant talking down of the UK economy is coming through in these numbers.
Well, there we go. Joining us now is GBNews political editor Christopher Hope. Christopher, good morning. Thank you for joining us. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Rachel Reeves mentioned the word growth 31 times during the budget in October. And, dare I say, Labour inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7. So how do they square off today's figures?
Well, morning both. Morning. They're worried about it. I mean, Rachel Reeves says today we're determined to deliver economic growth, and as higher growth means increased living standards for all of us. Of course, that's right. Being determined to deliver growth isn't the same as delivering it. And the problem they've got is it has fallen both in September and October narrowly by 0.1%. And you're right to say, Miriam, what does that mean to ordinary people? That's a question I think is being asked, I think, within the Labour government. And they want to make us all feel better in our pockets and the living standards to rise. They've moved away from that target of being the fastest growing economy, Ben, in the G7, to having an aim of doing that. But the Tory party, of course, is rightly saying, some would say, well, you've brought in a budget which has meant it's more expensive to hire people. It's 2% more on national insurance to hire somebody. Concerns about, of course, inheritance tax on farmers, the winter fuel allowance. There's a negativity around the economy. This new government came in and suddenly found this £22 billion black hole. Some of that, maybe all of that, has been substantiated by independent experts, but that has meant they are talking down the economy for six months. They waited for a long time for a budget. That delayed everything. So I think this government's getting going slowly, and we're only 6 months into a 4.5-year government. So
you mentioned talking down the economy, and I think sometimes people think of the economy as a machine, and if you make certain interventions, and you can predict what's going to happen. But actually, so much of it is vibes, it's confidence.
Yeah, sentiment.
Exactly.
And it's how you feel about yourself, and they know that. And, of course, this is very difficult, I think, and you know, you've got the Mel Stride here saying it's no wonder businesses are sounding the alarm. This falling growth shows a stark impact, he says, of the Chancellor's decisions in October 30th budget and continually talking the economy down. They want to change that. We're hearing from the Labour today on clean power. Ed Miliband, this Clean Power 2030 action plan. The idea there is to try and move us towards a carbon-free economy. 95% of energy from windmills and solar farms and the rest. But quite interestingly than that, even the retail offer from that isn't being talked about properly. The Tories say there's no mention of cutting energy bills by £300. That was a big moment in the election. So, yeah, not great news.
Yeah. And I think just on Ed Miliband's net zero surge, I think, was it this morning, the grid was made up of nearly 80% gas because the storm Dara scuppered solar farms and wind farms all across the country. I mean, you couldn't make it up. You were quite right, Chopper, in saying that the markets and GDP and so on is all about sentiment and how, you know, the mood of the nation. The Labour have been criticised this morning for A, delaying the budget for so long, just get it out there, and B, in the run-up to the budget, the Prime Minister and Rachel Reeves were warning of doom and gloom and telling us to brace ourselves. I mean, they scored an own goal there, really. Do you agree with that?
They lost some of the goodwill. I mean, I was there in the Rolls-Royce factory when Rachel Reeves said we're going to do our budget after the OBRs looked at it. The OBR needed, I think, 10 weeks. So that's why they delayed for so long. The OBR is the independent forecaster. Yeah. They were so jumpy about doing something which might spook the markets. They had to get, like Liz Truss did with her budget. That's what delayed it. But I think that delay in not having an immediate budget shortly after the election is part of the problem. We feel stalled now.
Especially as it created a kind of freeze in business activity because there was just the sense of the unknown.
And the fear stories, what was going to come next.
Chris, thank you so much. You'll be joining us later. But joining us now in the studio is former Labour advisor and columnist Paul Richards. Paul, thank you so much for coming in. I mean, this feels like very bad news news for the Labour government. The one thing that they promised was to be better at managing the economy than the Conservatives.
Well, I think they are better at managing the economy after the Liz Truss budget. But I would say I thought Rachel Reeves' interview with GB News this morning was actually quite bullish. I think she sounded quite confident. I think she's being realistic about the fact that the immediate improvements aren't going to happen straight away. But I think there is a plan there now and some stability. The markets haven't gone haywire today in the result of this news that the economy is flatlining. And it's interesting that if you look underneath the Office of National Statistics figures, two things that are of concern. One is services and retail. Well, that'll pick up over Christmas. And the other is construction. Well, Labour's just announced a massive house building programme, which will definitely get that moving too. So I think we will see growth in the next quarter. I don't think there'll be a recession. I think actually this quarter will lock in some of that activity that we all want and the economy will improve.
Paul, you say we didn't expect improvements straight away on the economy, but it's not just improvements. They've gone backwards. The Labour inherited...
It's flatlining.
Labour inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7. Something like 0.6% over the first 6 months of the year. The best results in decades.
People didn't feel that, though. Otherwise, they would have voted Conservative again.
Well, we can only work on the figures that we've got. And the fact is that Labour inherited... I mean, aside from a bunch of other economic gifts, such as falling interest rates, falling mortgage costs and so on and so on.
Nobody felt that, though, did they? And that's why people wanted change back in July. But people also know full well it ain't going to change straight away.
But you agree that Labour inherited, by the facts, the fastest growing economy in the G7?
No, disagree.
And we've gone backwards?
No, I think we inherited an incredibly weak economy with flatlining productivity, sclerotic wages...
But, Paul, those are the facts, though.
And no investment over 10 years. And it was a really weak economy.
Sorry, can I just be clear with you?
Now absolutely trying to put that right.
Can I just clarify with you? Those are the facts. The GDP figures for the first 6 months of the year...
There are some of the facts, but my point is that we had sclerotic production was on the floor, wages were flatlining, people didn't have money in their pockets to spend.
But it's very difficult, Paul, to see how that will change because, yes, OK, the construction sector might see a bit of a revival, but at the same time...
Hang on a minute, Miriam, we've announced enormous new numbers of homes.
We've announced plans to do that.
And getting rid of all these planning blockers.
Indeed, but it's still far from clear that the government will actually manage to cut through some of that bureaucracy, the opposition. You know, that is a big task that's going to be very, very difficult. So, you know, we hope we will see a construction boom, but it's far from guaranteed. But the budget itself, of course, put employers off hiring low-wage workers, which is, of course, one way to boost the economy. But do you think this measure of GDP is actually relevant anymore? I mean, for GDP per capita to have stayed the same last year, given the levels of immigration, we've had to have growth of 2 or 3%. That's not going to happen.
I mean, I quite like the idea that David Cameron mooted a few years ago, which is having a happiness index. And it's a bit picking up Ben's point about how you feel about the economy. You know, it's not just about these numbers, which, you know, 0.1 either way doesn't make any difference to me at all. But do people feel confident? Are they going to spend their money? Are they going to invest and so on? It's a different metric. And I think the happiness index could be one way to do that. It's quite an interesting idea. But, you know, how you feel is absolutely part of the economy, isn't it?
Well, I mean, again, I go back to the facts. The Bank of England started cutting rates in August. Mortgage costs were coming down, energy costs were coming down. And by the way, just on energy as well, we were told by Ed Miliband in the run-up to the election that bills were reduced by £300 a year. Now we don't have a particular time stamp on that. We don't know when that's going to happen. In fact, energy bills are going up in January. So, again, I would argue...
Sure, but he has put a plan in place today which will, over the long term, bring the bills down because we're going to become more energy self-sufficient, not relying on the Russians or gas, and get the planet in a better place too. So, you know, the government has only been in for less than half a year and it's made a series of big announcements on the wealth fund, on the national minimum wage. We've nationalised the railways. You know, there's the green plans, there's the house building. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's early days. That's all I would say. Just, you know, hold your breath. Let's see where we are in a year's time. And I'm sure you'll have me back in here defending it.
I'm sure we will.
Wrong.
I'm not sure I want to risk holding my breath. Paul Richards, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, up next, Prince Andrew has been linked to a suspected Chinese spy. More on that in just a second. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Last orders at the bar, and I'm joined by Geordie Shore star Ricky Guanaccio. Have I said that right? Is that Italian?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Is Italian? Your parents
Well
Italian?
done.
Is
The
it?
pronunciation was pretty much perfect.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, look, mate, Geordie Shore, I've never watched it, mate, so I do apologise about that. But I know these reality TV shows are making big stars out of the people, making you famous, making you loads of money. Is it worth it?
For me personally, yeah. It's been a hell of a career. Been a hell of a lot of fun doing it. Ups and downs, but first and foremost, money-wise, yeah.
That's good. So people stopping in the street, you being famous, wanting the autograph and all. How'd you cope with that, Ricky?
Well, when we first started doing the show, I mean, we got our show off the back of Jersey Shore in America. We never expected the fame that we got, and you know, being one of the biggest reality TV shows in the UK and now the world. You know, it's in 150 odd countries worldwide. Wow. It's pretty crazy. It's when you're living in houses. I mean, for example, Geordie Shore and Love Island's probably the same as well. When you're living in villas and you're living in houses, the arguing side sort of plays on your mind. You've got to deal with all that. You know, it's a hard place to be. It's a pressure cooker.
You're living in one of these villas, Ricky, or one of these houses. Do you ever wake up one morning and think, what am I doing here?
When I first started, yes. Yeah. Now, I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't mind all the, you know, there's no emotion connecting me now with film, and it's kind of like I go in there, it's fun, or it's, you know, it's dramatic, whatever it may be.
Have you ever worked behind a bar?
No.
No?
Yeah, for not a long period of time. My mum and dad had a...
Well, I can
definitely mess this one up.
Yeah, I can actually believe that you've never worked behind a bar.
Yeah, so my parents sacked us when I worked in the restaurant.
Well, obviously, I mean, you wouldn't get a job here with a pint like that, would you?
Do you want it?
No, mate, no.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello, welcome back. Now, according to reports, an alleged Chinese spy who's suspected of having links to Prince Andrew has been banned from entering the UK on national security grounds.
Now, the man known only as H6 was found to be a close confidant of the Prince and was reportedly invited to the Duke's birthday celebrations.
The Home Office has accused the individual of covert and deceptive activity, acting on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party.
Now, Buckingham Palace has declined to comment at this time.
We're joined now by former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Elwood. And, good morning, Tobias. Are you there? Yeah, here you are. This is rather concerning.
Can you hear me OK?
I can hear you. Rather concerning, and it has memories of Beijing Barry Gardner at the time, who had his own links to the CCP. Are you as concerned as some of our viewers are this morning about this?
I'm hugely concerned, and there's a bigger picture here which we really must not miss. This is what China does, grey zone warfare, and it's very, very good at it. Seeking opportunities, looking for vulnerabilities to gain privilege and restricted access, not just to promote a softer, more positive image of China, but to seek and exploit opportunities for coercion, espionage, intellectual property theft, with a view to causing economic harm and sowing political discord. It's no surprise that Prince Andrew, given what has happened to him and stripped of the royal household support that might have offered better advice, was targeted this way. And I'm sure that there'll be questions asked about that. But my takeaway from all this is the geopolitical, the absence of clear strategy, given this is what China and Russia now do, sub-threshold warfare. This is the face of the new Cold War we're now subjected to, and we must wake up to how vulnerable our country has become.
So we understand that this individual was arrested under counter-terrorism provisions at a UK border in December 2021, and then his phone was interrogated and these letters and this evidence was found. But are you saying that you believe this is actually quite a common occurrence now? This has made the news because of the fame of the person involved, but you believe this is quite a common occurrence then, as something that the Chinese are tactically doing all the time?
Absolutely. And that's what we need to understand and register. And there isn't a strategy for businesses to be supported. How do you get somebody vetted? Where is the guidance to say I can or cannot do business with China because we could be vulnerable? We need clarity here on how to handle a growing China that is ever dominant in our society. And it is our openness, our transparency of our society that makes us all the more vulnerable itself. So yes, this has happened to Prince Andrew. This is you started off by focusing in it as a royal story. I'm saying it's much bigger than that. It's a national security story, and it's just the start of how China and indeed Russia are collecting data and information to use against us in the longer term.
Do you think we take it seriously enough in the West, Tobias, the threat from China? Because I recall seeing yesterday Joe Biden had pardoned scores and scores of people, 3 of them, including Chinese spies who had been arrested in America. They're now going back to...
I think that... I don't believe we have at all. There was a discussion yesterday by NATO about whether or not to increase defence spending to 3% at the next summit. Well, look at the world around. Is it becoming more dangerous or less? The threats are multiplying, getting tougher and tougher, and we're doing little about it. And this, as I say, this great zone warfare will be the face of the Cold War. That's how...
OK, unfortunately, we've lost Tobias because the line was a bit dodgy, but we got the gist of it. Very concerning. I mean,
yeah, and an interesting suggestion from Tobias Elwood there that actually we need some sort of office that is set up to vet potential Chinese contacts for businesses across the country. There's a huge amount of trade going on with China.
I'm surprised there's not.
Yeah, there were certain pieces of legislation passed in the last Parliament that were there to put the kibosh on particular business deals when they were seen as not in the national interest, and that has indeed happened.
Yeah.
But it didn't highlight individuals of concern, and actually that's something that perhaps we ought to be doing.
Oh, apparently this chap, known only as, what is it, H6? He was at one point so close to the Duke of York, he went to his 60th birthday party, and this chap, H6, even showed the Chinese President Xi Jinping around on a state visit to the UK. He was his #1 chaperone when here in the UK. Very bizarre. Just sticking on the royal stories, there's another one on the front page of The Sun. Apparently, a Christmas party of Buckingham Palace staff went a bit wrong, shall we say, after a boozy brawl. It wasn't on the palace grounds, and it was an informal party, but trouble flared up when up to 50 servants arrived for a pre-arranged bash. A woman believed to be a household maid at Buckingham Palace aimed a punch at a manager, smashed glasses, and there was an arrest as well. So there we go.
Well, there you go.
Happens to the best of us.
All workplaces are the same. Not GB News, of course. We don't have a punch-up there.
Indeed. Lots to come in the next hour, including the under-30s may be able to get free movement back in a deal with Germany. Stick with us. Back in just a tick.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's another cloudy and dull day ahead for many of us, with some rain and drizzle at times, and on the chilly side too, with temperatures widely just below average for the time of year. So plenty of grey skies to go around today. There will still be lots of dry weather around, but we can't rule out some rain and drizzle at times, particularly around hilly areas, with some longer spells of rain just starting to clip the northwest of Scotland and perhaps western parts of Northern Ireland later into the day. And some blustery winds following on behind those outbreaks of rain too, and temperatures widely just below average for the time of year, only seeing highs of around 7 to 8 degrees. Now, as we head into the evening, those longer spells of rain that are clipping the far northwest of Scotland will slowly edge their way further inland. This could be quite persistent and perhaps heavy at times, mainly across hills. Turning clearer behind this though, but plenty of blustery showers behind too. These outbreaks of rain just starting to edge into western parts of Northern Ireland as well. And then elsewhere, once again, that cloud sticking around, those outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across western parts of Wales and parts of southwest England too. And it pretty much stays that way across England and Wales through much of the night, cloudy with some outbreaks of rain and drizzle. It will start to turn clearer from the far northwest, though we can't rule out some showers at times. These could fall as snow across the hills of Scotland, perhaps to higher ground roads as well, which does lead us into an ice risk across Scotland during the early hours of Saturday. But elsewhere across England and Wales, that cloud sticking around, so another grey start. Still once again with some rain and drizzle at times, so this mainly across Western Hills, with some brighter spells by the time we get into the afternoon, though a few showers around coastal areas. And then once again, it's the far northwest where we start to see some longer spells of rain and some blustery winds just start to creep in across western Scotland and northwestern parts of Northern Ireland, and temperatures struggling still round about average for the time of year.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are delays of up to an hour and a half to Stena Line sailings between Cairn Ryan and Belfast, with lorries heading to the port being parked up at Castle Kennedy Airfield. Train services are suspended between Dumfries and Carlisle because of an obstruction on the line. In Tyne and Wear, the A695 is blocked eastbound by an accident on Scotswood Road in Newcastle, causing queues. The Port of Holyhead's closed for emergency repairs. Buses replaced trains again today between Llandudno and Blaenau Festiniog and between Shrewsbury and Swansea. And train services are suspended between Carmarthen and Pembroke Dock because of poor rail conditions. In Worcestershire, the A441 is closed in both directions at New End, south of Redditch, because of a fire, and Eurotunnel are reporting a wait of up to half an hour for passengers at Folkestone. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Friday the 13th of December. Live across the United Kingdom, this is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and Miriam Cates.
Very good morning to you, hope you're well. Britain's economy unexpectedly contracts by 0.1%, so could we be heading towards a Reeves recession? Well, the Chancellor seems to blame the Tories.
It's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months.
The economy shrinks for 2 months in a row, and this is before the impact of the budget is felt by companies. Are we on the way to a recession?
And the Brexit relations reset. A poll shows the majority of Brexiteer voters would accept free movement in exchange for access to the single market.
Royal spy links. Prince Andrew's under fire after reports reveal links to an alleged Chinese spy who's been banned from the UK.
And is this the end of lunch breaks? Well, Kemi Badenoch claims lunch breaks are for wimps after boasting she brings in her own as she's got no time.
And freedom of movement for the under-30s. Is it a good idea? Well, the German ambassador has sat down with GB News' Christopher Hope for a grilling.
Will be many things on the agenda. The security pact, which is proposed by the British government. So cooperation on a wide area of topics, respecting, obviously, the red lines.
But including the idea of under-30s?
It will be included.
And should we save the turkeys at Christmas? Well, Gen Z are cancelling Christmas turkeys and have said they'd rather eat halloumi or fried chicken instead.
I'm dreaming of what? 43% of Brits say they only dream once a night, but experts claim we can have up to 6 each night. So why don't we remember them, and what does it all mean?
I mean, I have heard before that we do all dream a lot. It's just that you don't remember them unless you wake up in the middle of them. And that doesn't happen very often. Although I always find that if I've got to get up early in the morning, I have a recurrent nightmare, which is that I've missed my alarm.
Oh, I dream quite a lot, but I can't, unless I write them down in the morning, I can't quite remember. I think it depends on what stage of sleep you're at as well. Isn't it REM? I'm not an expert, of course, but REM is where you start dreaming quite vividly, I think.
I can't remember. That's right, and it's that. But that's the time of sleep where you get your most refreshing and that you really, really need. But yeah, do let us know what dreams you might have had. Any related to Christmas, maybe? Panicking about not taking the turkey out the oven in time?
All the saucy ones too. First, let's get your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Good morning. The top stories. We start with some breaking news this hour that the actions of armed police who surrounded and arrested a 13-year-old boy after an officer mistook his water pistol for a real gun were reasonable in the circumstances, according to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. The boy had suffered soft tissue injuries after he was rammed off his bike by a police van and handcuffed as he was confronted by marksmen in Hackney, East London in July last year. Well, the IOPC has said it investigated allegations of adultification and discrimination by police officers against the child. Campaign group The Alliance for Police Accountability, which supported the mother of the child, has criticised the decision. In other news, the UK economy shrank for the second month in a row in October as concerns about the budget continued to weigh on confidence. The Office for National Statistics said output fell 0.1% following the 0.1% decline recorded for the previous month. The figures showed zero growth in the powerhouse services sector, with manufacturing and construction declining at a pace of 0.6% and 0.4% respectively. The ONS says activity had stalled or declined, with pubs, restaurants and retail among sectors reporting weak months. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she's disappointed by the data.
But it's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months. But you'll see from the plans we've been announcing, whether that is the energy reforms we've published today, the reforms to build 1.5 million homes that we published yesterday, the pensions reforms, the creation of a national wealth fund, this government are getting on with the job in improving economic growth and driving up living standards.
Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride told GB News the falling growth shows the stark impact of the Chancellor's decisions and continually talking down the economy.
Well, it's not good. These are stark figures. This is the second consecutive month in which the economy has contracted. Now, bear in mind that the government actually inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7 from the last Conservative government. And what this shows is that this government's constant talking down of the UK economy is coming through in these numbers. Now, of course, we've had a budget. We're going to be seeing higher taxes, higher inflation, higher interest rates, downward pressure on wages and higher unemployment. And so it's no surprise that businesses right up and down the country are now sounding the alarm.
According to reports, an alleged Chinese spy suspected of having links to Prince Andrew has been banned from entering the UK on national security grounds. The man, known only as H6, was found to be a close confidant of the Prince and was reportedly invited to the Duke's birthday celebrations. The Home Office has accused the individual of covert and deceptive activity acting on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. Buckingham Palace has declined to comment at this time. An investigation will take place after reports a member of Buckingham Palace staff was arrested after a Christmas party, according to a palace spokesperson. The spokesperson said appropriate action would be taken after the palace was made aware of the incident. The Metropolitan Police told The Sun officers had been called to a bar in Victoria Street after reports a customer had smashed glasses and attempted to assault a member of staff. They said a 24-year-old woman was arrested on suspicion of common assault, criminal damage and being drunk and disorderly before being released after being given a penalty notice. Royal Mail has been fined £10.5 million for missing postal delivery targets. Regulator Ofcom said 74.7% of first-class mail and 92.7% of second-class mail was delivered on time in 2023 and this year. But the targets were 93% and 98.5%. It's the second time Ofcom has fined Royal Mail since the pandemic, and it needs to do much better, according to the regulator. In a statement, Ofcom said the company blamed a challenging financial position for its poor performance. Elsewhere, the government has unveiled a clean power action plan to decarbonise the electricity grid by 2030. Number 10 claims the move will protect households from any future energy spikes, boost growth and tackle the climate crisis. Meanwhile, some government-backed researchers have warned Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change Ed Miliband's plans could actually increase energy bills, as people could be forced to pay premium to secure the correct technology. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has issued a stark warning to the West.
It is time to shift to a wartime mindset and turbocharge our defence production and defence spending.
He warned the military alliance's members were not spending enough to prepare for the threat of a future conflict with Russia. Mr. Rutte said Moscow was preparing for long-term confrontation with Ukraine and with us, describing the current security situation as the worst in his lifetime. His comments come weeks before President-elect Donald Trump takes office, having previously suggested the US would not protect NATO allies that were failing to spend enough on defence. NATO members have pledged to spend at least 2% of the value of their economies, measured by GDP, on defence per year by 2024. The Chief Constable of Lincolnshire says he'll need to lose more than 400 officers without extra funding. Paul Gibson's warning comes days after his counterparts in the Metropolitan Police and Essex said they would also have to cut staff if shortfalls in their budgets are not addressed. Mr. Gibson says funding has not matched population growth, and to maintain existing levels of operations, Lincolnshire Police would require an extra £57 million over the next 3.5 years. Among pledges announced by the Prime Minister last week was a guarantee that every neighbourhood will have a named, contactable police officer responsible for dealing with local issues. And 2 people have been taken to hospital and several others were also injured after a fairground ride failed and crashed in Birmingham. West Midlands Fire Service said the ride dropped to ground level whilst in operation in an incident around 7:30 yesterday evening. According to West Midlands Ambulance Service, paramedics found 13 patients in need of help when they arrived at the scene. 2 women were treated by ambulance staff for injuries not believed to be serious and taken to hospital. Around a dozen others were addressed and discharged at the scene. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news from me in half an hour.
Very good morning to you. Ben and Miriam with you on Britain's Newsroom this morning, live across the UK. And thank you for your comments as well on gbnews.com/your say. Some very funny ones. You've been very creative this morning. And also some news. Have you heard of this, Miriam? The Reform Council win. They won a seat in, was it?
Somewhere in the northwest, I think.
Let me just tell you exactly where it was. Blackbrook.
Yeah.
Vic Floyd of Reform UK won a seat on St Helens Council from Labour after the incumbent passed away, a lady called Linda Maloney. Another success for Momentum, not Corbyn's wing of the Labour Party, for Reform.
Well, and there was another by-election council seat in Barnsley yesterday where the Lib Dems retained it, but significant increase in vote share for Reform and a collapse in vote for both Conservative and Labour there. So,
oh dear.
Yeah, the reform definitely seems to have all the momentum.
When are
them, like you say, at the moment.
When are the local elections? Is it May next year?
May next year. I'm not sure what proportion of seats are up for grabs. It's normally a third each year, isn't it? But it will be very interesting. And I think what's so challenging to kind of the traditional way of doing politics is that certainly in the Conservative Party it's all about how many leaflets can you deliver, how many doors can you knock on, and yet Reform got 4 million votes in July without delivering hardly any leaflets. It wasn't about local campaigning at all.
Was it about TikTok views and YouTube views?
Partly,
they really have taken a stranglehold.
I think partly, but I think it was much more about a general disappointment, frustration, anger with the Conservatives and also Labour, the mainstream party, resulting in a surge of support for reform. So, I think, Labour and the Conservatives will be thinking, how can we get this back? We need better candidates, we need better leaflets. But I just don't think that's the answer at all.
Interesting. Yeah, May is going to be pivotal, to say the least. One quick one from Bob. You said, we appear to have a bunch of turkeys in government. I think Starmer is a fan of Brussels, whilst Comrade Rayner gets roasted in virtually every interview she does. Assuming we'll be able to buy produce this Christmas, they will be a prime example. Is that what it says? Yeah, anyway, very funny. Well done, Bob.
We need to make sure we've got a Christmas lunch. I think that's the message, which I very much agree with.
Make sure you go for lunch.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
lunch is very important. Not for wimps.
Not for wimps, not me. The UK will be pressured next year to allow under-30s from the EU to live and work in the UK as part of a new deal to reset the UK-EU relationship.
Well, the German ambassador to the UK, Miguel Berger, sat down with GB News' own political editor, Christopher Hope, to discuss these Brexit relations resets.
Government here says no plans for movement under 30s, but there's been talks already privately with the German government?
No, not yet. And this would be negotiated by the European Union.
Oh, I see. You can't do individual deals.
We would not do it individually, but you have seen that the Prime Minister is going to meet Ms. von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, somewhere in spring next year. And then we will start talking about the whole reset, because so far it could not be done. Why? Because the European Commission was not up and working. It was just confirmed some days ago. And so in spring, we are going to start these talks.
And will this be on the agenda, freedom of movement for under 30s?
There will be many things on the agenda. The Security Pact, which is proposed by the British government. So cooperation on a wide area of topics, respecting, obviously, the red lines.
But including the idea of under 30s?
It will be included, yeah.
Yes.
And also the question of Erasmus programme,
yes,
where the United Kingdom in the last minute opted out of it. So all of these things will be again on the table.
Well, joining us now to discuss this story is GB News political editor. You saw him in the video. He's now here in the studio. Chris, the EU are desperate to restore this freedom of movement for under 30s, aren't they?
They are, and great to see you both in the studio. They are. They really want it to happen. Will it happen? Big question. What they do keep telling you is the red lines are Keir Starmer's red lines, no going back into the customs union or the single market. But what they want is freedom of movement for their own young people. They want to come to the UK, learn English, which is the global language, and go home again. And that's why it will be on the agenda of what is a crucial, I think, summit between Ursula von der Leyen, who's the EU president, and Sir Keir Starmer early in the new year, after a meeting on the 3rd of February between all EU 27 heads of state or leaders with Sir Keir Starmer. So the first 6 months of next year, I think, are massive in this, in quotes, reset of the European Union-UK relations.
Christopher, does that include, do you know, asylum seekers in Germany? I mean, would Angela Merkel's guests be able to then travel to the UK?
Depends on their status, Ben. There were 3.5 million immigrants who arrived in the past 10 years in Germany, 1 million or so from Syria when Angela Merkel opened up the border. If they have full German passports, there's no reason why they couldn't come across if they're under 30.
Right.
Now, separate to this, there's a poll out that shows that the majority of Britons, including Brexiteers, would be willing to swap freedom of movement to get back into the single market. Is this poll all that it seems? It seems very surprising that people are so keen on even more immigration.
It's a poll of 9,000 people.
Over 6 countries.
Over 6 countries: Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Poland and the UK. 54% of Britons, they said, who voted to leave, including 59% of those in the so-called red wall seats, Labour seats, you might argue. It said in exchange for single market access, they would accept full freedom of movement for the EU and UK. I mean, I think this is so kind of... I think we've moved on a bit. I mean, given a million people arrived here, nearly a million people arrived here in the last calendar year, net legally arrived here, the fact we might go back towards this is, I think, for the birds. But just tweaking it around the edges, the Erasmus scheme, of course, for students to go backwards and forwards between universities, that's one idea. But I think the problem with even the under-30s issue is we are told they want to reduce net migration.
Yeah.
If you do that, you lose control of numbers. You have no idea
exactly.
how many
and the figures
here.
will look dreadful, even if they are people who only come for a
Back
year.
in the 2000s, when I was doing the Home Affairs job at the Telegraph, and we were trying to work out how many people are here, the government had no idea because of the freedom of movement. So we were counting what called NINOs, national insurance numbers, to try and get a handle on it. I mean, it's really hard to control.
Who conducted the poll? Was it The Guardian or someone?
It wasn't, no, it was a body I've never heard of.
It was a European-wide body. I mean, it's only 1,500 people per country, but what really surprised me is that the European countries were much less keen on freedom of movement.
I think they've moved on a bit. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they have. I think some people here haven't quite moved on from the battle over Brexit. It's a bit alarming, I think, for some people to go towards that battle.
And also, it just feels like kind of, boil the frog slowly kind of thing. It's like, well, let's start with this freedom of movement deal, a little bit there, and then maybe 5 years down the line, let's do this, and then
And then we become tied to a body we can't make the laws for. That's the point. And don't forget, we haven't even talked about Donald Trump. He takes over on January 20th. He wants a trade deal, we think, with the UK. He wants closer ties with the country his mother is from. Don't forget that. What will he think of this kind of thing? This trade and cooperation agreement will be talked about next year and the following year. Fishing rights come back to the UK. Will they be sold down the line for access to other areas?
Now, of course, there is a link between this story about freedom of movement and the economy, because one of the reasons that it feels that our economy is so sluggish is because we've had this huge increase in population without corresponding economic growth. And I think if we'd just stayed level last year, the economy would have had to grow by 2 or 3% to take account of the number of people that came here.
GDP per capita, per head. So we all feel poorer, and that's really why Labour won the election in July. I think, 14 years of not feeling richer for most people gave them that win. I should say the GDP, by the way, increased by 0.1%, not fell in September and then fell in October. It's basically flatlining at the moment, and we are teetering going towards, and the worry will be a recession. We're nowhere near there yet, and we'll know that after the first quarter next year.
OK, Chopper, thanks very much. GDP per capita, of course, is the true measurement of how well off we are feeling. And we were told, weren't we, for year after year after year, that migration is good for GDP. Well, GDP per capita has been contracting for decades. And at the same time, migration has been uncontrolled, exploding, millions of people in the country. So if you ask me, that's a myth that migration fuels GDP.
Yeah, and I think what is different now. So before Brexit, and lots of Eastern Europeans came over here to work, earned good money, sent it back home. And the gap between our economy, our GDP per capita, and Eastern European countries like Poland is narrowing. I mean, even if we did have freedom of movement now, I very much doubt the same numbers of Polish children, Polish young people, for example, would come here, because there just isn't that differential anymore. They've grown lots quicker than we have.
Just very quickly, Miriam, before we move on, Liz Truss was tweeting this morning. She said, higher taxes, more regulation, more spending, more immigration, more net zero leads to lower growth. The economic doom loop continues. Has she been vindicated this morning?
Well, the thing is that everybody forgets about Liz Truss's mini-budget. People concentrate on the tax cut for the wealthy, which was a tiny amount of money. The problem was she also wanted to spend billions on propping up people's energy prices. Now, that's not a small state policy at all.
It was an emergency,
It was that debt. Well, it may be a popular policy, but it was that debt that spooked the markets, not the end to the bankers' bonus tax. So it's important to remember that.
I think particularly for businesses, those at that point when Russia had invaded Ukraine, businesses were going under. The cost per unit was something like £1.50
I'm
per
not
unit
arguing that we shouldn't be subsidising people's energy prices. I'm saying that the narrative is she crashed the economy because she ended bankers' bonus tax. That's not true. She crashed the economy because the amount of money, the debt, the extra debt that we were getting into, which isn't actually a very conservative policy.
And also, she didn't put your mortgages up. They're going up all around the world. So there we go. Anyway, every day we have a poll of the day. And today we've been asking, do you back Ed Miliband's Clean Power 2030 action plan? We'll be bringing you the live results throughout the day, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And the final results will be announced later in Martin Daubney's show.
So for all our latest polls, news and how to vote, just go to gbnews.com/poll.
Up next, jury trials could be axed to ease backlogs, but what does this mean for the safety on our streets? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Back in a tick.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's a time for the vegan community to get together, as well as an opportunity for non-vegans to try going plant-based.
Well, joining us now is from her delicious hummus. We both love hummus. This is a great thing. This is the founder of Chickpea, Hannah McCollum. Hannah, lovely to meet you. And you've brought in some of your beautiful products in front of you here. So can you talk us through some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a range of chilled hummus, and then latest to the range of a new ambient snack pot, which is a fridgeless hummus that doesn't require refrigeration. But I started Chickpea because of my love for hummus, but also sustainability and reducing food waste and encouraging people to be more plant-based without saying go vegan.
Does normal, say, traditional hummus have anything that's not vegan appropriate in it?
Not really.
No.
I think
it's always chickpeas, olive oil, maybe some other bits.
Yeah, lemon juice, aquafibre or water to help with consistency, garlic, and rapeseed oil or olive oil.
And there's a bit of a misconception about veganism that I hear a lot, where people say, look, I'm not a vegan, I love my steaks, I'll just get out of there now. But there's a misconception that you don't get the protein, you don't get the fats, and you're kind of just eating processed salads and, fake meat and things. But that's not quite the case, especially with chickpeas, right?
Yeah, I think protein is really important, and actually a lot of people think I need a certain amount of fish every week or meat, but actually a lot of the fish and meat that you're eating are eating higher protein foods, so algae, seaweed, pulses, all these types of plant-based foods. For me, veganism is like you could have a delicious rye seeded bread with just loads of roasted vegetables, seeds, tahini sauce on top. That sounds and there's nothing beige in there at all.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 23 minutes past 10, and this is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and Miriam Cates.
Morning. We're also joined by broadcasters Bruce Devlin and Claire Muldoon in the studio. I called you something funny in the breakfast, didn't I? I called you, was it Alex Muldoon or something?
No.
Oh, no? Was it you or someone else? Sorry, ignore me.
No, you got someone's name wrong.
Yes.
That was it last week.
It was Andy and Alex, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome back.
And
to
you.
the GBNews studio. Hello, Bruce.
Hi.
What should we start with? What about Wes Streeting? I'm a secret fan of Wes Streeting. I know the viewers will annihilate me for that.
Now, Ben, sorry.
Well, yeah, it's not a secret. But he's criticised Ed Miliband, his Labour colleague, over his failure to back military action against Bashar al-Assad in Syria in 2013. After that gassing, of course. Claire, do you want to kick off with that?
Yeah, let's. I'm a very big fan of Wes Streeting. I think he might be the next leader of the Labour Party, actually. I think he's a man of conviction, and I think he is a strong-willed man. And I think this is more to do with the fact that he's stamping his authority on the party. He was one of the only MPs, like Rosie Duffield, who voted against the assisted dying bill, that went against his party, and we know there was no whip involved in that. Therefore, it was a free vote. He also knows what a woman is. That's absolutely fundamental to my politician's standing, I think. And also, he has got the NHS in his palm, and he knows exactly what is needed.
And sorry to interject, 2 days ago he also announced the permanent ban of puberty blockers in the UK.
Indeed.
Which he got a lot of stick for from...
Yes, but I mean, it is part and parcel of safeguarding children and keeping them children until they are of an age, a legal age, when they can make these decisions by themselves. Anyway, so I've got a lot of time for West Streeting, and I think this whole thing about him attacking Ed Miliband, of course the papers would use that rhetoric. They would say he was attacking Just for Us to talk about it like we're doing. But I think it's more him stamping his mark on the party. And if we look back in history to 2013, to the strikes, it was more focused. The optic was clearly on Obama at that time than it was more so for us. And history has taught us to look back retrospectively and hopefully learn from it. We now know chemical weapons were used on the people of Syria.
But he's right. I mean, at the time, unusually, Parliament had a vote about whether to go for these strikes. I think that's probably because Cameron was spooked by everything that had happened to Blair, under Blair. But Ed Miliband absolutely did lead the charge against that, didn't he?
And also with that, though, that Obama did a complete U-turn. And we always follow America. Look at the Iraq war with Bush and Blair. And, you know, it's actually time that we actually stood on our own 2 feet, collectively, as a nation. But Ed Miliband, I've got no time for, actually, either, in his net zero stupid policies.
I don't understand why he's...
Get in the bin. And can we recycle Ed Miliband, do you think?
I don't think so.
Bring him down to net zero?
He's too plastic. But he's really ineffectual and he's hanging around. He's like some unwanted uncle at a family function. He has a look of a trouser fumbler about him. That's just my opinion.
Well, we should probably move on swiftly from that to a slightly less serious story about a Christmas party punch-up at the Palace. Bruce, do you think this is really news?
Bruce was there.
It was me. I'm the 24-year-old woman that was arrested and flung in the cells. This is actually very close to where I live, so it's quite exciting for me. So it was basically 50 aides from the Palace had gone to their staff night out in all bar one in Victoria, and someone went mental, as we would say, up the road. But it began at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What do you expect? Because I doubt much food was taken. I don't think there were many canapes. But apparently this individual was smashing glasses, screaming. And the thing is, as well, all joking aside, right, OK, is it newsworthy, is it not? I think it just goes to show how difficult the service industry is at this time, with people just being catatonic.
I think there's another angle here as well, and that of Christmas parties. I think people have got this propensity just to let off as if they're a Christmas cracker themselves.
I think they're quite dangerous to go to these days if you're a professional. I mean, what's the risk reward? You end up... I mean, what's the reward? You have a nice time with your friends and your colleagues.
I had a lovely time at ours on Saturday.
At the GBNews one? I didn't go.
Oh, well, that was... per you then.
But it is, and the focus is all on, you know, how much you can drink, you know, how...
A lot, by the sounds of things.
Exactly, and you know, unfortunately, if you are in a business where the eyes are on you and you will do something like this in the public eye, then you do risk...
But that's the thing, you're right. I mean, you do have a kind of... Although you're behind the scenes, you're associated with something incredibly high profile. And so... But the thing is, as well, was it a free bar? Because I know what I'm like. I don't get invited to free bars anymore because I just take full advantage.
It just doesn't seem worth it anymore. You could say something after a couple of drinks that somebody takes the wrong way. The next day you've got an HR complaint or, you know, who knows?
Right. That's the other thing. Companies now have got so much potential risk factor associated with anything their employee does because they are responsible for them. And the last thing they want is someone taking offence, as someone said. I mean, we do talk about it. Banter police. When is that going to start? When will it stop? Thought police. Oh, you thought that. Didn't say it, but you thought it, and I'm offended.
Well, on the topic of the police, another story we've got today is about the fact that jury trials could be axed in order to ease the court backlog, which we know is making cases taking months and months and months to come to trial. I mean, do you think this is a good idea?
No, I don't at all.
Juries?
Don't at all. Don't at all. They tried it in Scotland.
Yeah.
It was mooted and it was brought back because of the judiciary. That is part of your innocence and your guilt. The fact that you are tried in a court of law by 12 members of your peers.
But for lower order offences, that's not true. I mean, if you commit a minor crime...
You've got the magistrates' courts for that.
Yeah.
They don't have juries. Well, why don't they increase that then? You cannot get rid of juries.
No, but I don't think they're planning to get rid of juries for all offences, just for some offences.
Yeah, but it couldn't be minor then, Miriam, because they would be...
Well, it would have to be...
Yeah, but it depends on the
the
variation of whatever the crime was, because obviously not everything you're right is a parking fine in a magistrate's court or a driving offence or, you know, whatever.
And my lad, I send you back to 12 Angry Men, one of the best movies ever made.
Oh.
Indeed.
12 Angry Men?
Yeah.
That'll be on over Christmas.
I'll have to watch it.
Oh, you must. It's a black and white.
What year was it made?
Black and white, but a...
Don't know, I wasn't born at least.
Thriller, really, isn't it? Yeah.
One of the first,
yeah,
I think.
very, very good.
OK, great. Bruce, Claire, thank you very much.
You're
You'll be
very
back
welcome.
in the next hour or so. More coming up on Britain's Newsroom this morning, but first let's get your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ben, thank you. The top stories. The UK economy shrank for the second month in a row in October as concerns about the budget continue to weigh on confidence. The Office for National Statistics said output fell 0.1% following the 0.1% decline recorded for the previous month. The figures showed zero growth in the powerhouse services sector, with manufacturing and construction declining at a pace of 0.6% and 0.4% respectively. The ONS says activity had stalled or declined, with pubs, restaurants and retail among sectors reporting weak months. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she was disappointed by the data.
But it's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months. But you'll see from the plans we've been announcing, whether that is the energy reforms we've published today, the reforms to build 1.5 million homes that we published yesterday, the pensions reforms, the creation of a national wealth fund, this government are getting on with the job in improving economic growth and driving up living standards.
In other news, according to reports, an alleged Chinese spy suspected of having links to Prince Andrew has been banned from entering the UK on national security grounds. The man, known only as H6, was found to be a close confidant of the Prince and was reportedly invited to the Duke's birthday celebrations. The Home Office has accused the individual of covert and deceptive activity acting on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. Buckingham Palace has declined to comment at this time. And Royal Mail has been fined £10.5 million for missing postal delivery targets. Regulator Ofcom said 74.7% of first-class mail and 92.7% of second-class was delivered on time in 2023 and this year. The targets were 93% and 98.5%. It's the second time that Ofcom has fined Royal Mail since the pandemic, and it needs to do much better, according to the regulator. In a statement, Ofcom said the company blamed a challenging financial position for its poor performance. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2643 and €1.2048. The price of gold is £8,322.48 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,322 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's another cloudy and dull day ahead for many of us, with some rain and drizzle at times, and on the chilly side too, with temperatures widely just below average for the time of year. So plenty of grey skies to go around today. There will still be lots of dry weather around, but we can't rule out some rain and drizzle at times, particularly around hilly areas, with some longer spells of rain just starting to clip the northwest of Scotland and perhaps western parts of Northern Ireland later into the day. And some blustery winds following on behind those outbreaks of rain too, and temperatures widely just below average for the time of year, only seeing highs of around 7 to 8 degrees. Now, as we head into the evening, those longer spells of rain that are clipping the far northwest of Scotland will slowly edge their way further inland. This could be quite persistent and perhaps heavy at times, mainly across hills. Turning clearer behind this though, but plenty of blustery showers behind too. These outbreaks of rain just starting to edge into western parts of Northern Ireland as well. And then elsewhere, once again, that cloud sticking around, those outbreaks of rain and drizzle, particularly across western parts of Wales and parts of southwest England too. And it pretty much stays that way across England and Wales through much of the night, cloudy with some outbreaks of rain and drizzle. It will start to turn clearer from the far northwest, though we can't rule out some showers at times. These could fall as snow across the hills of Scotland, perhaps to higher ground roads as well, which does lead us into an ice risk across Scotland during the early hours of Saturday. But elsewhere across England and Wales, that cloud sticking around, so another grey start. Still once again with some rain and drizzle at times, so this mainly across western hills, with some brighter spells by the time we get into the afternoon. There are a few showers around coastal areas. And then once again, it's the far northwest where we start to see some longer spells of rain and some blustery winds just start to creep in across western Scotland and northwestern parts of Northern Ireland. And temperatures struggling still round about average for the time of year.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are delays of up to 2.5 hours to Stena Line sailings between Cairnryan and Belfast, with lorries heading to the port being parked up at Castle Kennedy Airfield. Buses replaced trains between Dumfries and Carlisle because of an obstruction on the line. In Tyne Wear, the A695 is closed eastbound along Scotswood Road in Newcastle after an accident causing queues. On the M66 in Greater Manchester, 2 lanes are closed southbound after an accident between junctions 3 and 4 towards Simister Island. And on the M60 in Greater Manchester, 2 lanes are closed clockwise for repairs between junctions 15 and 16 from the Swinton interchange to Pendlebury. The Port of Holyhead remains closed for emergency repairs. Buses replace trains between Llandudno and Blaenau-Festiniog, also between Swansea and Shrewsbury. In Worcestershire, the A441 is closed in both directions at New End, south of Redditch, because of a fire. And Eurotunnel report a wait of up to half an hour for passengers at Folkestone.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 10:36. You're watching Britain's Newsroom with Miriam Cates and Ben Leo, and we're asking, are Gen Z turning their back on Christmas traditions?
We ask that because over 75% apparently of Brits aged between 18 and 26 say they would ditch turkey, mince pies and Brussels sprouts for alternative foods on Christmas Day.
So we're asking if it's time to break with tradition.
We're joined now by celebrity chef Theo Michaels, who believes turkeys should keep being eaten at Christmas, and senior media and communications manager at the animal charity Jennifer White, who believes we should stop eating turkeys. Jennifer, we'll start with you. What's your, I think I know the answer to this. What's your issue with turkeys?
Good morning. Well, of course, we are urging everyone to have a vegan Christmas and enjoy the festive season with delicious and nutritious vegan foods instead. And you really can have it all. If you want that traditional Christmas feel, you can have a vegan turkey, but also you could have a bucket of vegan fried chicken too, if that's what you'd rather. But the main thing is that you can enjoy all of that nostalgia of your favourite foods, all of the taste, but just without any of the cruelty.
Jennifer, dare I say that those alternatives are very unhealthy, ultra-processed, millions of ingredients. Why not just have a fresh bit of lean meat with one ingredient, meat, which has all the vitamins and, in some cases, the creatine, all the essentials, instead of getting some processed junk served to you in plastic?
I mean, there's absolutely nothing healthy about eating the rotting corpse of a tortured bird. And we know that, people who have a vegan diet suffer less from certain types of cancer, from high blood pressure, from heart disease, and a host of other health conditions. So the best thing that you can do for your own health as well is absolutely eat a diet that is high in vegan foods, which, of course, fruits, vegetables, grains. You don't have to have a meat alternative this Christmas if you don't want one, but there are certainly options available for everyone.
Theo, rotting corpse or a lean source of protein?
Wow, the rotting corpse of a turkey. That was brutal. Look, I think the reality is I'm not salivating, if I'm honest, over the idea of a nut roast for my Christmas dinner. There's a tradition of turkey that's been around since Henry VIII, and turkey, there's an entire industry around turkey farming, and actually it's a really healthy meat. It's really lean. When it's cooked great and it's rested for a good hour, it's succulent and juicy, and to me that's part of the absolute tapestry of our Christmas dinner. I understand if you happen to be vegan, but the notion of trying to convert the masses to a vegan dinner, I'm struggling to salivate over the idea of that, if I'm honest.
Jennifer,
and I think, go on, after you, Ben.
Honestly, tradition is no excuse for cruelty, and we are talking about individuals here. And of course, I'm not here telling people what they can and can't eat. I'm simply encouraging people to make more informed choices. So if you are someone who is thinking of eating turkey or cows or pigs this Christmas, go to PETA's website and just try watch some of the investigation footage that we have taken at hundreds of British farms showing deplorable conditions of animal suffering. And honestly, it's so awful that most people can barely watch more than 30 seconds of it. And if you cannot watch it, then surely you should not be buying it.
Yeah.
And do you know what? There are some unscrupulous sort of animal welfare issues out there, and I don't think anyone disputes that. But for so many farmers, there's a turkey farm I'm thinking of. They've been in business 25 years. The turkeys are free range. They're having the time of their life. They are well-kept birds. And when the time comes, they are manufactured for our kitchen tables in the most humane possible way and the quickest way. But this is... Like we are meat eaters, we are carnivores as human beings. It's part of our entire evolution. I don't dispute, I think it's a great thing that there are more vegan options and there is more vegan sort of potential. But we're talking about Christmas dinner here. And I've got to say, I'd be upset. I wouldn't be able to pull my cracker with someone if they were serving me the vegan turkey over Christmas.
Jennifer, do you think veganism has peaked? I mean, there's certainly an increase for some time, but I think last year's figures showed a decrease in the number of people who say that they are vegans. Do you think, have you got a much bigger job to do to persuade more people to come around to your point of view?
I mean, we're still very much in the middle of a vegan boom at the moment, but I think just going back to what Theo said when he used the word manufactured, that is certainly one way to whitewash and gloss over the fact that turkeys who are killed between 12 weeks and 26 weeks are, you know, they are hung upside down, they are shackled, they are dragged through an electric bath, which doesn't even stun them properly, and they are often still alive and conscious while their throats are being slit. And that is not very festive, I think we can all agree. And the best way to show kindness to everyone is by not eating animals. Do they not deserve to be part of the season of goodwill as well?
No, they do deserve to be part of this. They do deserve to be part of the season of goodwill, and they look especially well, slightly bronzed with an orange on the side.
Oh, Theo. Jennifer, believe it or not, I do agree with you. I think mass industrial farming has a lot of questions to answer for, and I think I agree with you as well. If you can't watch the slaughter videos and the way some of these animals are treated, then I don't think you should be eating meat. Likewise, I think you should be able to, or at least want to be able to slaughter your own animals if you're going to be a meat eater. I think it's a bit hypocritical if you don't. However, as I said, my issue with veganism at the moment is you get all these plastic-produced fake meats. I also understand, Jennifer, why you want to mimic meat, the texture of meat, the flavour of meat, you know, the juiciness of meat. If it's so horrible, why do vegans want to mimic it so much?
Well, that's a good question, but it's actually because most people don't go vegan because they don't like the taste or the texture of meat. It's because they don't want someone to have to die for their meal. So that's why these meat alternatives are great for people who still want that nostalgia of their favorite foods. But of course, there is no pressure for anyone to eat that. You know, you can have, you know, tofu, seitan, or, you know, just vegetables, pulses, grains, pasta. You know, there are so many foods that you probably already eat that are just accidentally vegan, that are so good for you, filled with protein, filled with iron. There's just absolutely no need in 2024 for any of us to be eating the flesh of animals who did not want to die.
Do you know what, Jennifer? I do agree with you on so many counts, if I'm honest. But I think part of this is about sustainability, and it's about us. Still, I believe in being a meat eater, but I believe it about being true to the welfare of the animals. Pardon me, making it a sustainable product and a highly sort of conscientious means as well. I mean, you pulled me up on using the word manufactured. Equally, the connotations of your vernacular of dragging the animals through and slitting their throats, we're both sort of over-exaggerating, I guess, in that respect.
Well, you can watch that for yourself, though. You can watch those videos. They are all on Peter's website. You can see for yourself I'm not exaggerating.
But then we should also film really high quality, high standard farms that do treat animals with a lot more respect. And I believe that this is more about sustainability, keeping meat within the food chain, but making it sustainable and changing the entire.
But there's just nothing sustainable.
So there is
I think Sadly, we're going to have to leave it there. We're going to have to leave it there. But Jennifer, Theo, thank you so much. And do let us know if either Jennifer or Theo have convinced you to change your mind about what you'll be eating for Christmas Day. I think what's really interesting about that is Jennifer kept talking about these animals as if they're people. You don't have to eat someone. Fundamentally, this comes down to, do you think that animals are sentient beings that should have equal rights as human beings or not?
Well, they are sentient beings and they are conscious and they have feelings and emotions. I mean, cows are meant to be very intelligent, likewise pigs. But I'm sorry,
they're not humans.
we eat meat. The majority of us eat meat. I respect vegans. I just think they're slightly misinformed about things being healthier when it's so ultra-processed.
And especially teenagers need protein, especially teenage boys. And this trend for schools and universities to come up with, Vegan Monday or we're not going to serve meat anymore. I actually think it's quite a health concern for growing teenagers to not have enough protein.
There's been so much propaganda over the years about things like eggs, saying they cause high levels of bad cholesterol. Yeah. They're actually full of very good cholesterol. Butter, saturated fats, animal fats. It actually turns out, according to lots of studies, those things aren't as bad for you as previously discussed. And also things like almond milk and all these alternative milks. If you go to California, where most of these are produced, they're absolutely wiping out bee colonies, bee populations in California. It's a really unspoken about dark side to veganism. But
when
anyway.
you mess with the natural world, you get all sorts of unexpected consequences, don't you?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to be staying on the theme of food and asking, are lunch breaks for wimps? Well, Kemi Badenoch, leader of the Conservative Party, seems to think so. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
This is Miss Universe fans hailing the end of wokeness and crediting the Trump effect after a biological woman, there's still some of them around apparently, has won the 2024 crown. She's Miss Denmark, because obviously the last decade, it's just been obese transgender smurfs from Papua New Guinea. They're the only people allowed to win any beauty contest, you know what I mean? You're not allowed to have any.
Some of the trans women have won these. You definitely wouldn't say no.
Honestly, I've seen some, but I've seen some of them that didn't, and some that were clearly just there out of
have there been more than one trans woman?
Yeah.
I didn't realise this.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've got a chart at home. This one isn't trans. Victoria Kjær Thielvig, 21 of Denmark. Everything about that description says attractive.
Nazis. Okay, yeah. I have seen pictures of her. She is very attractive.
Yes.
She is.
Yes.
I don't know exactly how to put it, but she is kind of not retro or vintage or so. She's quite an old-fashioned notion of beauty, just absolutely ice blue eyes.
No penis.
Absolutely extraordinary, clear skin and gorgeous blonde hair. I mean, it's absolutely kind of mid-70s.
No, apparently the sanity's returned to the beauty pageant industry, so they can get back to sexualising 4-year-olds and promoting anorexia like they used to. So
there is that.
She will earn an estimated $250,000 annual salary working full-time as Miss Universe, and will live in a luxurious New York City apartment as she carries out her duties, which involve glass coffee tables and rich Saudi businessmen.
Glass coffee tables. And visiting other planets and solar systems and constellations, I would imagine, in Miss Universe.
Being concerned about animals.
Yes, absolutely, and wanting to bring about world peace. I miss those days.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's nearly 10 to 11. Ben and Miriam with you on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch butted heads yesterday over a very pressing matter. You'll never guess it, sandwiches.
In an interview with The Spectator, Kemi Badenoch claims lunch breaks are for wimps and said they weren't real food.
Meanwhile, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage didn't hold back in his response.
The leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition, Kemi Badenoch, says that lunch is for wimps. Well, I tell you what, I think that lunch is pretty cool. But on the busy days, I stay in the office and have a sandwich. She even thinks sandwiches are wrong. Now, I leave it up to you, centre-right voters, to decide what kind of leadership you want. Lunch is for wimps or me? Cheers, everybody.
Makes me giggle. We're joined now by behavioural psychologist Joe Hemmings. Joe, good morning. Sandwiches and lunch breaks, are they for wimps?
Good morning. Look, I can't work out if Kemi Badenoch is being deliberately provocative or she thinks she's got some sort of superpower, because 94%, a staggering 94% of us eat sandwiches at lunchtime. Wow. It's a national British tradition. And actually, if you don't eat lunch, all the studies, all the research would say we're less productive in the afternoon. We lose our energy, we get fatigue, our decision-making is impaired, our cognitive clarity goes. I mean, there is no reason on earth that I can see in any research why you'd want to skip lunch. 25% of people skip breakfast. So if they're the same people who are skipping lunch, they're going to be really non-productive and exhausted. Afternoon, so I really can't work out why she's stirring this particular pot, to be fair.
Nevertheless, it has stoked interesting discussion about lunch and different lunch habits and traditions. And I think what Nigel Farage's intervention shows is how much things have changed. You know, there was a time, maybe back to the 1980s, where people in certain professions would stop, have lunch, boozy lunch, drink red wine, and then go back to sleep. Now, surely you're not suggesting they are going to be particularly productive in the afternoon?
No, and judging by Nigel Farage's lunch that he was just having, I don't think there was a lot of work that was going to be done later that afternoon. No, but even 20 or 30 minutes away from your desk or having something to eat, it doesn't have to be a lunch hour. It just has to be, and also social connection if you're eating in a canteen. You know, all that stuff is just missing if you don't eat lunch. No, I think Nigel's rather boozy-looking lunch, joyous as it looks, is probably not a productive way to go about things.
Yeah, it's a very strange comment from Kemi Badenoch, in my opinion. You need, even if you're not going off to eat a sandwich or lunch or whatever your choice of food may be, surely you need just 20 or 30 minutes just to reset your brain. I don't think there's anything noble or virtuous in just grafting for 10 hours a day as if you're, you know, some sort of robot. I mean, where's the plaudits in that?
I don't know. I felt she was just trying to prove that she was, you know, a warrior, omnipotent. She didn't need lunch, but that's not normal. Even if you have to have it at your desk, and 30% of us sit at our desks and eat lunch, which I always think of messy keyboards at this point. But anyway, if you have to, you have to.
Yeah.
That is better than skipping lunch altogether.
But
so
But again, that's an interesting cultural idea, because certainly in places like France, having lunch with other people as a social event and away from your desk is, is a big deal. And indeed, the success of French high streets has been credited with the fact that people leave their offices and go out for lunch and eat together. Actually, wouldn't it be better for us if we did use that time to be sociable, never mind what we eat?
Yeah, wholly. Firstly, you've got things to do sometimes at lunchtime, pop out and buy stuff, because you're working all day. People who are working from home maybe have less time in the office, so getting to know their colleagues on a social level as well as a professional level.
Yeah.
These things are all really important, so I cannot say. I did note she said something about sometimes she has a steak at lunch. I think, okay, who
Very bizarre. Joe,
steak?
thank you for your time this morning. Appreciate it. I'll leave you to go and get some lunch.
Yeah, thank you so much. A bit early, but I will.
Kemi really, she's not impressed me at all. I've heard more about lunch and her eating steak than I have Tory policy.
I don't know whether it's one of those throwaway comments that's now been written up into some story.
Even at the dispatch box at PMQs, I mean, she's talking about immigration and accusing Labour of not handling migration, but she was the one who wanted no caps on migration. I don't understand
Well,
her
if
thing.
eating turkey at Christmas is bad, a steak every day for lunch is not going to be good on the vegans' wish list, is it?
I could have that. A bit of sirloin for lunch. Anyway, still to come, are we looking at a recession under Rachel Reeves? We'll find out in just a tick.
start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's been a fairly cloudy week and another pretty drab day for most. Some rain and drizzle here and there, but many places will stay dry. We are in for a change, though. This cold front is swinging its way south, and that should clear away a lot of the clouds, so many of us will be brighter tomorrow. Now, today, as I said, it is mostly cloudy, but there's some sunshine over parts of northeast Scotland where we had a pretty harsh frost last night. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud, some rain and drizzle, southern Scotland, parts of the southwest, and there's that weather front coming in. That'll bring some wet weather across the Highlands come this afternoon and into the evening. Many places just dry and cloudy with temperatures around or a touch below average. The winds, though, are pretty light. It's going to feel quite cool, I suspect, though, with these outbreaks of rain coming into the southwest. Probably nothing too heavy, but certainly a damp afternoon for Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, parts of South Wales. Bit of light rain and drizzle further east, but a good chunk of England will stay dry. There's that weather front bringing some rain across the Highlands of Scotland. Behind it, we'll start to see the clearer skies coming in. And that will be quite noticeable as we go through tonight and tomorrow. We'll track this line of rain then as it sinks its way into southern Scotland across Northern Ireland this evening, kind of fizzling out as it does so just a little bit of light rain and drizzle for a time. And we'll continue with some patchy rain over England and Wales too, quite murky over some of the higher routes. But then the clearer air comes in and the clearer skies come into Scotland, Northern England, parts of Northern Ireland. And temperatures will drop here, certainly in the east of Scotland with some shelter, could get down to -2 or -3. The cloudy skies keeping temperatures above freezing for England and Wales. So it will still be cloudy first thing tomorrow here, but I'm hopeful that Northern England, much of Wales will brighten up. Some showers coming into North and West Wales. Sunnier day for many, and even the southeast will eventually cheer up come the afternoon with some sunny spells before more rain then comes back into the northwest later on. Bye for now.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements? Or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you. It's 11 o'clock on Friday, December the 13th, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Miriam Cates.
Now, Britain's economy unexpectedly contracted by 0.1%. Could we be heading towards a Reeves recession? Well, the Chancellor seems to blame the Tories.
It's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months.
Royal spy links. Prince Andrew under fire after reports reveal links to an alleged Chinese spy who's been banned from the UK.
And is this the end of lunch breaks? Kemi Badenoch claims lunch breaks are for wimps after boasting she brings in her own as she's got no time.
Freedom of movement for the under-30s. Is it a good idea? Well, the German ambassador sat down with GB News political editor Christopher Hope for a grilling.
Will be many things on the agenda, the security pact, which is proposed by the British government. So cooperation on a wide area of topics, respecting, obviously, the red lines.
But including the idea of under-30s?
It will be included.
And sweet dreams are made of this. 43% of Brits say they only dream once a night. But experts claim we can have up to 6 dreams each night. So why don't we remember them? And what does it mean?
So, do you know what? I'm not that particularly bothered about this freedom of movement thing, aside from the fact it's probably the first stage of many towards closer ties with the EU, because we've got open borders as far as I'm concerned anyway. You've got hundreds of thousands a year coming legally. You've got, 40 or 1,000 a year coming illegally. What does it really matter? We've got open borders anyway.
I think the problem is that more immigration, especially from young people, will just suppress wages even more. That's what immigration has done over the last few years. So I don't think that's a good thing. But I don't think the government will go for it because they're desperate to get the figures down. And this would just mean that they couldn't keep track of people. The figures would go up. So I don't think they'll go for it.
Lots of viewers this morning asking as well, would German asylum seekers or asylum seekers in Germany, would they be part of that cohort who could travel freely to the UK? Christopher Hope doesn't seem to think so. It would be confined to German citizens.
Yeah.
However, who knows? Would Angela Merkel's arrivals be in your high street next year or the year after? Who knows?
Yes, well, we'll see, but I just don't think... I think they'll be put off by the figures. I think Yvette Cooper will win.
OK, we'll see. Big show coming up last hour. Get your views in gbnews.com/your say. But before we do anything else, here's your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ben, thank you very much. The top stories. Well, the UK economy shrank for the second month in a row in October as concerns about the budget continue to weigh on confidence. The Office for National Statistics said output fell 0.1%, following the 0.1% decline recorded for the previous month. The figures showed zero growth in the powerhouse services sector, with manufacturing and construction declining at a pace of 0.6% and 0.4% respectively. The ONS says activity had stalled or declined, with pubs, restaurants and retail among sectors reporting weak months. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she was disappointed by the data.
But it's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months. But you'll see from the plans we've been announcing, whether that is the energy reforms we've published today, the reforms to build 1.5 million homes that we published yesterday, the pensions reforms, the creation of a national wealth fund, this government are getting on with the job in improving economic growth and driving up living standards.
Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride says the falling growth shows the stark impact of the Chancellor's decisions and continually talking down the economy.
Well, it's not good. These are stark figures. This is the second consecutive month in which the economy has contracted. Now, bear in mind that the government actually inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7 from the last Conservative government. And what this shows is that this government's constant talking down of the UK economy is coming through in these numbers. Now, of course, we've had a budget. We're going to be seeing higher taxes, higher inflation, higher interest rates, downward pressure on wages and higher unemployment. And so it's no surprise that businesses right up and down the country are now sounding the alarm.
According to reports, an alleged Chinese spy suspected of having links to Prince Andrew has been banned from entering the UK on national security grounds. The man, known only as H6, was found to be a close confidant of the Prince and was reportedly invited to the Duke's birthday celebrations. The Home Office has accused the individual of covert and deceptive activity, acting on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. Buckingham Palace has declined to comment at this time. An investigation will take place after reports a member of Buckingham Palace staff was arrested after a Christmas party, according to a palace spokesperson. The spokesperson said appropriate action would be taken after the palace was made aware of the incident. The Sun reported a female member of staff was arrested at a bar in Victoria on Tuesday. Buckingham Palace says reports of staff members' arrest will be investigated in due course. In other news, the actions of armed police who surrounded a 13-year-old boy after an officer mistook his water pistol for a real gun were reasonable in the circumstances, according to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. The boy had suffered soft tissue injuries after he was rammed off of his bike by a police van and handcuffed. He was confronted by marksmen in East London, while the IOPC has today said that those actions were reasonable. In other news, Royal Mail has been fined £10.5 million for missing postal delivery targets. Regulator Ofcom said 74.7% of first-class mail and 92.7% of second-class mail was delivered on time in 2023 and this year. Well, those targets were 93% and 98.5%. It is the second time that Ofcom has fined Royal Mail since the pandemic, and it needs to do much better, according to the regulator. In a statement, Ofcom said the company blamed a challenging financial position for its poor performance. The government has unveiled a clean power action plan to decarbonise the electricity grid by 2030. Number 10 claims the move will protect households from any future energy spikes, boost growth and tackle the climate crisis. Meanwhile, some government-backed researchers have warned Miliband's plans could actually increase energy bills, as people could be forced to pay premium to secure the correct technology. And 2 people have been taken to hospital and several others were also injured after a fairground ride failed and crashed in Birmingham. West Midlands Fire Service said the ride dropped to ground level whilst in operation in an incident around 7 o'clock yesterday evening. According to West Midlands Ambulance Service, paramedics found 13 patients in need of help when they arrived at the scene. 2 women were treated by ambulance staff for injuries not believed to be serious and taken to hospital. Around a dozen others were assessed and discharged at the scene. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Hello, good morning. It's 11:07. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Miriam Cates this morning. We've been talking a lot about eating meat, particularly turkey at Christmas. We had somebody from PETA, the animal charity, on saying we absolutely shouldn't eat meat this Christmas because it's cruel, so on and so on, you can imagine. Lots of you getting involved. You've said, Ian, good morning to you. I'm worried about eating turkeys. I'm worried about eating turkeys of colour because I might be called racist. What about the bronze turkeys? OK, yeah.
Yeah, that's what the chef said, how well done they should be.
Yeah, the celebrity chef we had on. And who else? John, you said, Ben, I don't agree with you that you're only entitled to eat meat if you are able to view animal slaughter videos. Worse, that you should only eat meat if you're able to slaughter it yourself. It's a highly skilled thing. Meat consumption should be addressed collectively, not reduced to an individual litmus test. I get that. I think you should be able to to watch how they're slaughtered, though. If you can't do that, I think you're slightly hypocritical.
The world's changed so much, hasn't it? Because a couple of hundred years ago, everybody lived in relatively rural areas. They'd watch, you'd have chickens in your house, you'd watch them being killed, you would probably do it yourself, or at least see a farmer or a butcher do it. And now I think a lot of children growing up in very urban areas genuinely don't know where meat comes from and what it actually is.
Yeah,
probably not a good thing.
I think probably some young adults as well probably think meat just comes from the supermarket in a package piece of plastic, and then it arrives on your dinner plate. But yeah, interesting. Keep me coming.
I'm very hungry with all this talk.
I know. Have you had breakfast this morning?
I have.
I haven't.
But now I'm looking forward to lunch.
Yeah, indeed.
Anyway, the top story this morning is that the UK economy has shrunk by 0.1% in October, the second month in a row that the economy has contracted.
Here's what Chancellor Rachel Reeves had to say about the news.
But it's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months. But you'll see from the plans we've been announcing, whether that is the energy reforms we've published today, the reforms to build 1.5 million homes that we published yesterday, the pensions reforms, the creation of a national wealth fund, this government are getting on with the job in improving economic growth and driving up living standards.
Meanwhile, the shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mel Stride, placed blame on the government's autumn budget.
And what this shows is that this government's constant talking down of the UK economy is coming through in these numbers.
Joining us now is economics expert Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning.
Labour inherited the fastest-growing economy in the G7. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, said the word growth 31 times in her budget in October. We're not seeing it.
Yes, you can say growth as often as you like. It actually has to be some growth in order to achieve it. And also, the fastest growing, it's not very fast. Everybody was growing slowly. But it's interesting. EU is going nowhere at all, about the same as us. We're going flat. But America's not. America's economy is running hot, and they're going to be cutting interest rates next week as well. So actually they picked up. What's the difference? Because the government there has actually made sure there are now greater incentives to be investing, to encourage more money going back into the economy, particularly into tech and things like that. And that vital word, confidence, is there. What's missing from our economy over the past few months, few weeks since the election, was no confidence at all. So
of course,
that's
the other
difference.
difference with the US is energy prices. I mean, if you look at charts of both domestic and industrial energy prices compared to Europe and America, I mean, it's a phenomenal difference. You just can't produce things in Europe anymore. It's too expensive, whereas American going great guns.
Well, also, maybe very unfair on ourselves to say the steel industry, even in old-fashioned EU, actually the power they had was subsidised and supported so they could produce steel in a far more effective and profitable way. In this country, we actually paid more for it, so it was never going to be able to make any money. So talk about being hamstrung with it. But there's no reason where politicians should sit there and say, this is what we inherited, there's nothing else we can do. There are lots of things they can do, which doesn't actually cost the government a lot of money. We've got things like enterprise investment schemes, which could be broadened out to encourage more people to set up businesses. Well, we set up business anyway, we're very good at that, but to grow the business to the next stage and do it on a regional basis, particularly around all those tech hubs, that's where the business is growing, that's where they're starting, and the people who really benefit from that at the moment are the Americans, who come over and say, that's a great bit of technology, fancy going to California.
Justin, Labour types this morning have said, come on, it's only been 6 months, give it time to flourish, give it time to get this administration off the ground. Can I ask you, please, when is the cut-off date? When do we start saying, no, you've got this wrong, and they can stop using that excuse?
Oh, they'll carry on as long as it's there. No, they're right to an extent. They have inherited something. It takes a while to turn it around. But that's not the point, in my view. The point is actually inspiring people to say, yeah, it's not very good, but actually look at the points that actually are doing better, are doing well. We are seeing private investment there. We are still seeing lots of businesses being set up around the country, and we are seeing hotspots in terms of technology. And yet you actually look at the news at the moment, you'd think we're absolutely awful and dreadful. We're not. No. Talk it up, don't talk it down.
Although we've seen Labour government blame the Conservatives in turn, they blamed the Labour government beforehand. Isn't it the case that it isn't just about the last 2 or 3 years, or even the last 14 years? We've actually had decades of a particular economic model that is not working very well. We don't produce anything, we're in enormous amounts of debt, we're paying people not to work. I mean, the whole consensus is broken.
But put it around this way. Remember, we're still the world's 5th or 6th largest economy, depending how you calculate India's growth. We're still the 9th largest manufacturer in the world. You say we don't make it. We actually do make quite a lot of stuff. And we're the 14th, 15th largest exporter. But you wouldn't know any of that if you'd actually listened to the politicians. See, most of them have never been involved in business anyway, to actually understand what it's like and how painful it can be. Your house is on the line, your family's on the line, and you're trying to be entrepreneurial, and all the governments are saying, oh, well, by the way, we're going to put up national insurance. And who has to pay for that? The companies do. So they're not helping themselves.
Well, look, GB News is the people's channel, so we got the thoughts of the people. We went out onto the streets of Britain earlier today in London to see what they thought. Let's take a quick look.
I feel it's probably a government of recession, the way we're going. It's like we're possibly going into sort of a period of austerity again.
I think they're likely to do a better job than under the Tories, who are just making a complete hash of everything.
Yes, they've got good intention, Labour. I just don't think they're going to do it. I just think it's all pie in the sky, and we'll see.
I think it was positive to start with, but the way it's going at the moment doesn't look too positive.
I mean, it is a lot about vibes, isn't it? Like you say, how people feel about the economy. But if the government starts talking up the economy now, people will accuse them of being disingenuous and pulling the wool over people's eyes.
So what you've got to get is a clear series of messages coming through in different areas. This is what's being done and how it's improving. Now, there's actually no shortage of money in this country. We borrowed lots of money, so of course we did. But bear in mind, about a third of our government debt is actually owed to the government for quantitative easing. I mean, we're actually in a position where
we have to pay interest on it, though.
Well, who earns the interest? We do, because it goes back to the government. So that every 6 months, well, every year, the government will earn about £30 billion worth of interest on its own debt. This is why it's rather perverse, all of this, of quantitative easing. So, but there's an awful lot of pension money around that is actually invested very well, a nice broad way around the world. How about investing locally, investing in Britain? Not in nice-to-be areas, but actually profitable future businesses. So, actually, it's an initiative there.
Just before I let you go, Justin, can I read you Liz Truss's tweet from this morning? She said, higher taxes, more regulation, more spending, more immigration, more net zero, all leads to lower growth. The economic doom loop continues. Is she right? Has she been vindicated today?
Well, she likes the word more an awful lot, but certainly, yes, she is right in terms of all those things we would all agree with. It's the way she went about it was not the right way of going about it. Bad communication, no credibility, and people turn around, not just domestically, internationally, said, I don't believe you, I'm not investing, and the cost of that was painful for a lot of people. Interest rates went up, and those people on flexible mortgages paid a lot of money.
Indeed.
OK, Justin Urquhart-Stewart, thank you, as ever, for your expertise.
Now, every day we run our poll of the day. Do you back Ed Miliband's Clean Power 2030 action plan? We'll be bringing you the results throughout the day, so make sure you do stay tuned. And the final result will be announced later in Martin Daubney's show. And for all our latest polls, news and how to vote, just go to gbnews.com/poll. And there were some stats out this morning, as they are every morning, breaking down the how much of natural gas we're using, how much wind, solar, nuclear energy the UK is using. This morning we were using, I think it was approaching 70% gas to fund, or to fuel, rather, the grid in the UK. So this is why, however many renewables we have, you'll always need a base of either gas or nuclear or both for when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. So it's a false economy, really. Anyway, up next, the UK has crowned its ugliest dog. Find out what that looks like next. We cover everything on
ugliest
this programme.
What? Ugliest dog?
Apparently.
Yeah.
Not Turkey this time. Turkeys are pretty ugly, though, aren't they? Anyway, you're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Well, drinkers have been warned about a drop in the quality of French wines after poor weather conditions hit this year's grape harvest. Winemakers across France will make 240 million fewer bottles of wine this year, the country's farming ministry said on Tuesday. So should we think of switching from French to English? I'm joined now by sommelier and founder of Inflorescence Wines, Jacinta Madison-Williams. Hello, Jacinta.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First of all, let's just think about the poor French. Has this been a fairly universal weather catastrophe for France?
It has. Kind of across the board, we're about 22% down on last year's crops, which is quite significant. I think it's like one of the 4 years over the last century that have been this low. So.
And it's affected both quality and quantity?
I would say more so quantity. There's always ways of counteracting quality. It depends if people are desperate to make wine. They can obviously push out more watered down grapes. There's been a lot of rain, if you hadn't noticed. Not only in France, we felt it here too. But lots of frost, supercell hailstorms have completely wiped out some crops. So in some cases, there's nothing to make. In other cases, it's just really watered down grapes, and you want to pick earlier to make sure you're avoiding all those rains. But I would say more so it's quantity. But saying that, France is still the biggest producer of wine in the world. It might be taken over by Spain this year, but as a consumer, don't panic. We're not going to run out of wine. And we obviously have lots of lovely wine growing here now in England. So whether we do make a little jump for a bit to English wine, but there's definitely still lots out there.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 20 minutes past 11 and this is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and Miriam Cates. And we're now joined by our panel, broadcasters Bruce Devlin and Claire Muldoon in the studio to discuss today's news. Claire, an interesting story in the Daily Mail. Would you charge guests to come round for Christmas lunch? And, of course, making the point that it's quite expensive to feed a lot of people.
I don't care. You've invited people round to your house on the best day of the year, arguably. And what you're going to do, issue a bill at the end of it with service. I don't think so.
But what about family? So you might have many generations of one family and you pick the family who's got the biggest house. Yep. But why should that... I mean, it can cost hundreds of pounds.
Yeah, but do you know what? If you've been brought up rightly and if you actually like your family, you would say, shall I do the ham?
Well, that's a good way of...
Well, you do the... you know, what do you want me to bring?
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah. That's a good way of... If you don't like some family members or friends or in-laws, you can say, oh, it's going to be £100 a head. And they'll say, oh, well, I'll stay away.
And that's not the spirit of Christmas, darling Scrooge.
No, I know of somebody, not going to name them, but they, when a girlfriend or a boyfriend of their son or daughter came to stay, they charged them for a shower.
Really?
Pardon?
Yeah.
So I grew up...
You know, you know.
Right. I grew up in Dundee and there was a woman that lived on the same street as us with 4 children and she charged them for lunch.
Her own children?
Her own children at...
when they were at school? Lunch?
No, for lunch, like during the week when the kids were at school. So, yeah, imagine having to pay your mum to get, like, a sandwich and a bag of crisps.
I'd pay my mum off.
Well, absolutely. I think it's ridiculous.
Leave.
But I agree with you that the vast majority of people say, is there anything I can bring? Yeah. And people are going to bring alcohol and all that kind of stuff, so, yeah.
Or just don't have those hangers-on that you don't want to see, that you never see any other day of the year.
Go on holiday.
Go on holiday.
Get out the country.
Absolutely.
Unbelievably expensive, though, to go away at Christmas, isn't it? I mean, insanely so.
One woman here is charging our guests £200 a pop.
Wow.
Well, where's she getting the food from? Fortnum's and Harrods?
Well, who knows?
Because I would be dragging her across the dining table if anything came from Iceland.
You wouldn't be going, Bruce. You wouldn't be going.
I'll come to you.
Yeah, come to me instead. I've got 3 balconies, choose one.
Oh, thank you.
Right, shall we have a look at the UK's ugliest dog?
Oh.
Have we got pictures of the pooch? Apparently, this is 12-year-old Chinese crested canine could become the poster boy for quirky hounds after being crowned the UK's ugliest pooch. Hopefully, we've got a picture somewhere. Some animals are particularly ugly, aren't they? There was one in the Barbers the other day, a very small rat-looking dog. Have we got a picture of this?
Some people are incredibly ugly as well.
Oh, that's true. Faces that could stop trains.
Absolutely,
I mean, seriously.
Absolutely.
I feel sorry for the... Why would you...
Let's see the dog. Can you hold it up?
I
It's not that bad. I've seen worse, actually.
Yeah, I've woken up with worse myself, but I kind of think, why would you? Why would you? You know, it's beautiful in its own way, its wee tongue and all that kind of stuff. But you see that on Instagram a lot now, and it's all these dogs that look perfectly fine. Oh, scroll past if you think I'm ugly and it's like, why are you saying that about? Enjoy your pet.
You know, there's a very true saying that owners morph into their dogs.
Yes.
Don't they? I wouldn't like to see that owner.
I don't think that dog's particularly ugly. I think it's quite cute.
He's not particularly.
It is part of the social media culture, though, of just comparing what either people or animals look like all
it's
the time.
all for likes, and it's really sad.
And actually, you know, certainly see the harm that's been done to teenagers, for example, a very vulnerable time of life where what you look like really, really matters. And yet you or your pet or anybody is constantly being judged by other people.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's quite cute. He's quite cute.
Lovely hair.
Yeah, beautiful.
A bit of hair. Well, it's quite sparse, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the tongue's funny.
Right, what about this one breaking... Oh, the BBC have broken a story for once online this morning. Diary of a CEO host, Stephen Bartlett, is amplifying, allegedly, harmful health misinformation on his #1 ranked podcast. He said, Claire, that a keto diet, which, for anyone who's not familiar, is a diet on very low carbs, carbohydrates, I think it's less than 40 or 50 grams per day. He said people with on a keto diet prevents cancer.
Well, there's recent claims from his guests that was the case. Now,
from his guests. Apologies,
we all know what Ofcom are like in terms of their parity or disparity in terms of what they want pro and against. And that's really difficult, I think, for news organisations to actually have people for and against on a debate. And viewers often don't realise that is needed, and it is a control of actual output on TV and in radio, etc., just like we've got here at GB News. So it's really important that people are held to scrutiny, but that scrutiny is somewhat open to interpretation, and that's what the issue that I have.
There is no requirement for balance or scrutiny on podcasts, YouTube, those kind of channels. So that is a really, really important point, that broadcast media has to present a balanced view. I mean, you can't have an opinion, but you have to present both sides of the debate. Not the case for these kind of podcasts. So if you want to, you can present something that's...
But then surely it is up to the individual listening to do their own research and not just take everything, you know, as it's being fed to them.
Yeah. I completely agree. So just to be absolutely clear, it wasn't Stephen Bartlett who said that. No. He had a guest on the podcast who said a low-carb diet would be helpful for preventing cancer. Flight Studio, which is the podcast production company owned by Mr Bartlett, said guests were offered freedom of expression and were thoroughly researched.
Which I get as well, and I think that's a really good response from him. However, I think because the BBC name is attached to the podcast, I think that's why the scrutiny was there at the beginning.
Of course, because he's a dragon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. But I think it is a very really interesting point. You're saying, you know, it's up to the viewer to do their research. Well, yes, you could argue that. But what information do you then trust online? We are in a completely different world to 20 years ago, where all your information was through the broadcast media or newspapers, which, whether you like them or not, do have certain legal standards that they have to uphold. Now, you could search for, you know, is it true that keto diets cause cancer? I bet you can find thousands of internet pages that say yes and thousands that don't. So how are you supposed to filter that information as an individual who's not an expert in these things?
So I suppose you would go for a trusted and regulated body.
Like the BBC?
No, not like the BBC. Like an NHS website or something like that.
Can I discuss a story with you that's not on the list? Donald Trump is the Time Person of the Year. He was up against the likes of Kamala Harris. Who else was on there? Kate Middleton, Catherine Middleton, the Princess of Wales, was on there. Donald Trump won, Claire. I guess whether you are of his politics or not, he has had a pretty decent comeback.
You know, see, this is a really important point, actually. Regardless of whether or not you think he is the Messiah, regardless of whether or not you think he is a felon, he was proven to be a felon, I welcome the fact that Trump won across the pond. I don't like the man per se. I wouldn't want to have anything to do with him personally. However, in this day and age, we need a disruptor. We need someone that can do the things that he has already set out to do, and he's doing them. And he's doing them, he's shooting from the hip, which I think is so refreshing. And I really do welcome that. So him being Time Person of the Year, I think it cuts through all the diatribe, all the rhetoric. Well done, Time. About time.
Well, it's really like a Hollywood film, isn't it? That he, you know, as you say, a convicted felon and all that kind of stuff, and then to have come back and had this, what did the kids say now, glow up? You know, this huge political victory, again, whether you like him or not, is irrelevant. The story itself is quite spectacular and staggering.
And I think the criteria is the most influential person of the year, isn't it? And I think it's hard to argue that anybody has had more influence over global events than he.
Like it or not, that is the fact, I believe.
I also, I don't understand when people say, for example, oh, Donald Trump is thick or stupid, or even Meghan Markle, they say, oh, Meghan Markle's this and that. It's like, well, clearly, Donald Trump, he started out, he turned something like $1 million or $2 million into multi-billions. He was then a film star, TV star in his own right. Again, another lifetime achievement that most people wouldn't be able to achieve. And then he won the presidency the first time against all odds. So whether you like Donald Trump or not, you have to give him credit for being successful. And likewise, Meghan Markle. I'm not a massive fan of Meghan Markle, but I'll never sit here and say she's talentless or she's stupid or thick. Clearly, she's not.
But on the other hand, Kamala Harris, you know, she got... how did she get to where she was? Because when you know, lots of politicians are accused of not answering a question, right? And that's true. Lots of politicians can talk for hours and hours without answering questions. But she couldn't even articulate her basic viewpoints on things. And that made me think, has she actually got the capacity to be in that position? So just because you get there doesn't mean you necessarily got the intellect to carry it through.
Got it, but Kamala Harris wasn't a multi-billionaire businessman, wasn't a TV star and didn't win the presidency twice.
Good point.
So... who knows? All right, just going back...
didn't win, that's all I'm saying.
Just going back to the Stephen Bartlett story where one of his guests, or a few guests on his podcast, were saying low-carb diets are preventative for cancer. His production firm, Flight Studio, have said in response to that, the Diary of a CEO is an open-minded, long-form conversation with individuals identified for their distinguished and eminent career and/or consequential life experience. There we go.
There you go. Well, lots more to come with us, but first it's time for your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Miriam, thank you. The top stories: the UK economy shrank for the second month in a row in October as concerns about the budget continue to weigh on confidence. The Office for National Statistics said output fell 0.1% following the 0.1% decline recorded for the previous month. The figures showed zero growth in the powerhouse services sector, with manufacturing and construction declining at a pace of 0.6% and 0.4% respectively. The ONS says activity had stalled or declined, with pubs, restaurants and retail among sectors reporting weak months. Chancellor Rachel Reeves said she was disappointed by the data.
But it's not possible to turn around more than a decade of poor economic growth and stagnant living standards in just a few months. But you'll see from the plans we've been announcing, whether that is the energy reforms we've published today, the reforms to build 1.5 million homes that we published yesterday, the pensions reforms, the creation of a national wealth fund, this government are getting on with the job in improving economic growth and driving up living standards.
According to reports, an alleged Chinese spy suspected of having links to Prince Andrew has been banned from entering the UK on national security grounds. The man, known only as H6, was found to be a close confidant of the Prince and was reportedly invited to the Duke's birthday celebrations. The Home Office has accused the individual of covert and deceptive activity, acting on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. Buckingham Palace has declined to comment at this time. And planned strikes by workers on Avanti West Coast have been suspended. Members of the RMT union were due to walk out on December the 22nd, 23rd and 29th. The union members, who work as train managers, will now vote on a revised offer aimed at resolving a row over rest day working. An Avanti West Coast spokesperson said, "We are pleased that the RMT have decided to suspend these strikes, which would have caused major disruption to our services during the Christmas period." They also add that they remain open to discussion with the RMT and await the outcome of the referendum, where train managers can vote on this offer. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's market. The pound will buy you $1.2650 and €1.2059. The price of gold is £2,107.99 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,320 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, welcome back. And up at noon after this show, we've got Good Afternoon Britain with Emily and Charlie. So we're joined by you both in the studio. What's coming up on your show?
Yes, Charlie Peters in the studio today, which is rather nice.
Yes, Monday to Friday. Nice to end the week.
A little sandwich.
Yes, let's go with that.
We've been talking a lot about sandwiches.
We're not going to be talking about sandwiches. I mean, it might come up.
Oh,
It might come up. I know Ed Miliband's been talking about a bacon sarnie now, which is interesting to bring that back up, because it is a bad day for Ed Miliband, I would say. Now, he wants to push all this green energy. He wants to push the windmills, the wind turbines.
Right.
But have you seen that these wind turbines are going to be far bigger than previous wind turbines? Now, we're not talking 200 feet. We're now talking up to 800 feet, and local councils, local people won't be able to object.
Have you seen the amounts of steel needed for the foundations and the base of wind turbines? Just tons and tons and tons of it.
They're very impressive pieces of engineering, of course, which is it's quite cool to see them when they're being put together and in operation. But will they lower your household energy bills? That's the
Well, this is the problem. Ed Miliband struggling today to say what happens when the wind isn't blowing, when the sun isn't shining. He's also being questioned over this £43,000 that's been spent on his office refurb or something like this. And lots of infighting as well with Wes Streeting over Syria. It's not a great day out.
It's not, but at the same time, Ed Miliband's pushing the view that we have to do this because climate change, biggest threat to Britain's security, he said this morning. And a lot of people, of course, will want that shift to renewables to ensure our energy security after the war in Ukraine.
This morning, did you see the percentage of gas versus wind and solar being used to fuel the grid this morning? It's about 70% gas, because the wind's not blowing. Also, the storm destroyed some massive solar farms. And the point about
that is a massive concern. Yeah. The fact that we had all of this land being used for solar farms, bit of wind from Storm Darrett, and it's just destroyed.
Well, I'm assuming it's the offshore ones, because they're unbelievably exposed, aren't they? But do you think this could be that the Labour Party have recognised that Ed Miliband is not perhaps their strongest weapon? Because they're actually, they're talking tough on immigration, they're talking tough on the economy. Are they realising that actually net zero is increasingly unpopular and Ed Miliband could drag them down in the polls?
He's not exactly quiet. I mean, for someone, if they're worried about him being unpopular, he suddenly gets a lot of airtime.
But are they targeting him? Are they targeting him?
As in, is it a double bluff to put him out to make him fall? Is that what you're suggesting?
Maybe.
I'm not going to...
Well,
no, I mean
you've worked
Streeting attack.
You've worked in Parliament, you know how this works. But yes, the Wes Streeting attack.
That's what I'm
very interesting how they're fighting over Syria over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Whether they should have gone in then. We've also got an exclusive, don't we?
Yes, we're going to have an interview with the brother-in-law of a man called Ryan Cornelius. He's been held in the UAE, he says, on trumped-up charges, allegations of fraud since 2008. And we've been told, and we've seen legal submissions exclusively at GB News this morning that say that the Foreign Office is not doing enough to fight for the case of Cornelius and other Brits banged up abroad. They say that David Lammy's first meeting as Foreign Secretary was with the Emiratis. He did not raise the case of Ryan Cornelius. So we'll be speaking to his family today and asking if you trust Labour to fight for you if you get in trouble overseas.
There was also the other lad who was accused of having a holiday romance with a 17-year-old. He's now doing a year in the Slammer in Dubai.
Well. That's harsh, isn't it?
Horrible.
No, very harsh, yeah. Right, just some breaking news coming into the newsroom in the past couple of minutes. 609 illegal migrants arrived in the UK in 9 small boats yesterday. So that's 609 illegal migrants arrived in the UK in 9 small boats yesterday. That's the first arrivals for over a week. What was the weather like yesterday? It was quite calm and sedate, wasn't it?
I can't remember, but I'm sure it was, yes. Up next, a special Christmas message for the 13th day of Advent. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's been a fairly cloudy week and another pretty drab day for most. Some rain and drizzle here and there, but many places will stay dry. We are in for a change, though. This cold front is swinging its way south, and that should clear away a lot of the clouds, so many of us will be brighter tomorrow. Now, today, as I said, it is mostly cloudy, but there's some sunshine over parts of northeast Scotland where we had a pretty harsh frost last night. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud, some rain and drizzle, southern Scotland, parts of the southwest, and there's that weather front coming in. That'll bring some wet weather across the Highlands come this afternoon and into the evening. Many places just dry and cloudy with temperatures around or a touch below average. The winds, though, are pretty light. It's going to feel quite cool, I suspect, though, with these outbreaks of rain coming into the southwest. Probably nothing too heavy, but certainly a damp afternoon for Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, parts of South Wales. A bit of light rain and drizzle further east, but a good chunk of England will stay dry. There's that weather front bringing some rain across the Highlands of Scotland. Behind it, we'll start to see the clearer skies coming in. And that will be quite noticeable as we go through tonight and tomorrow. We'll track this line of rain then as it sinks its way into southern Scotland across Northern Ireland this evening, kind of fizzling out as it does so just a little bit of light rain and drizzle for a time. And we'll continue with some patchy rain over England and Wales too, quite murky over some of the higher routes. But then the clearer air comes in and the clearer skies come into Scotland, Northern England, parts of Northern Ireland. And temperatures will drop here, certainly in the east of Scotland with some shelter, could get down to -2 or -3. The cloudy skies keeping temperatures above freezing for England and Wales. So it will still be cloudy first thing tomorrow here, but I'm hopeful that Northern England, much of Wales will brighten up. Some showers coming into North and West Wales. Sunnier day for many, and even the southeast will eventually cheer up come the afternoon with some sunny spells before more rain then comes back into the northwest later on. Bye for now.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. 11:40, Ben and Miriam with you on Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News. Let's go back to that breaking news we broke just before the break. 609 illegal migrants arrived in the UK yesterday in 9 small boats across the English Channel. We were just trying to look at what the weather was like. I think it was rather sedate because you mentioned that's very unusual for December.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, shocking figures. And we're in the tens of thousands this year already, aren't we? And gosh, I mean, even if some of them are genuine asylum seekers, it's an illegal way to come into the UK. And I suppose, partly as a former Conservative MP, just so disappointed that the Rwanda bill was not enacted before the election, because in theory would have had some sort of defence against this, be able to deport people.
You wonder why Rishi called the election when he did. So the total number of arrivals by small boats in 2024 now stands at a provisional 34,582, 34582. So this is 19% higher than at the same point last year, but 23% lower than the same stage in 2022. So, I mean, based on last year at least, it is up by 19%. The crossings on Thursday, the 609 illegal migrants who arrived, it was the first arrivals for 8 days, and they also represent the highest daily total since October the 18th, when 647 migrants arrived. So
it is just astonishing that there are so many people waiting in Calais, watching the weather, ready to cross, even in December. I mean, it's just absolutely astonishing. It just shows that you've got to have a deterrent. I mean, there simply isn't another way. I mean, I'm sure the French could do better at stopping people from embarking, but, I mean, really, the only way forward is to have a strict deterrent. You get deported as soon as you arrive and then processed in a third country. There isn't another way.
I guess Labour would say, but we have deported, sent back around, 10,000 people who shouldn't be here since the election. But my argument to that is, well, that's fine, but you've got hundreds coming.
And it's a tiny fraction, and it's people for whom we know their country of origin. And you know, one of the reasons that people are allowed to stay is they get rid of their documents. And then we don't know which countries... And also some countries, we're not allowed under international law to repatriate people because they are genuinely unsafe countries. So very difficult to solve.
Labour saying the migrant hotels would come to an end, but of course, since they took power, they seem to be popping up all over the country. I went to one in Milton Keynes the other week. There's ones in Warwickshire, elsewhere. I mean, they're back on the map. Migrant hotels alive and kicking.
Very difficult to know what to do. Anyway, during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we're hearing from church ministers across the country. And each day, they've got a special hope-filled message for you to celebrate the festive season.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 13.
Hi, I'm Tom Finnemore. At the heart of the Christmas story, there's a moment that's often overlooked. The moment when the angelic host appear to the shepherds. The skies light up with the chorus of angels declaring the birth of the Saviour. Now, this might sound like a beautiful, peaceful scene, but there's something radically surprising about it. You see, shepherds in that time were often poor, uneducated, and considered lowly. Yet these were the very people the angels chose to first reveal the good news to. This shows us that God's message of hope and joy isn't just for the powerful or the wealthy, but for everyone. The angels didn't announce the birth of Jesus to kings or priests, but to everyday working people. It's a reminder that the love and hope of Christ is available to all, no matter our status, our mistakes, or our past. This Christmas, let's remember that the story of Jesus is not just for the important or the worthy, it's for all of us, right where we are. The radical nature of Christmas is that God meets us in our reality, in our struggles, and offers us a message of forgiveness, peace, and joy. I wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Inspiring stuff. And you can see all of our special Advent messages as Christmas approaches by visiting gbnews.com/Advent.
Up next, a little dream of what? Do you dream? Do you dream often?
I don't normally remember my dreams.
No. Some people keep dream journals where they have a dream and they wake up and they write down. I mean, me, I'll forget about them within an hour or two. But anyway, experts, they claim we can have up to 6 dreams a night. So why don't we remember them? We'll be getting stuck into that in just a tick. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Do you use WhatsApp at work? Perhaps you communicate with colleagues about what your plans are for a particular job, or you communicate with your closest colleague and perhaps sometimes talk about some of your colleagues.
So
who's ever done that?
Why is that a problem?
Well, because whenever there is any kind of sort of breakdown in relationships in a workplace, which happens a lot, tribunals come forward, those WhatsApp messages can be used as evidence. So as long as you're happy for all of those messages to be brought out, which could be to your detriment or not, then fine.
Let's hope they don't publish ours.
Or do you think it's just safer not to use WhatsApp at work at all? That's what the management here would say. That's what the management in a lot of companies are now saying. Apparently the use of them in tribunals have trebled since 2020.
How do you air grievances or gossip or...
There should be no grievances.
So you shouldn't communicate with work colleagues?
Well, and not unless you're prepared for it to be brought in a case. You know, it's a bit like when your rights are read to you. Anything you say may be used against you.
Taken down?
Yeah.
OK. Right, so NatWest have banned staff from creating group chats on WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. So we're asking the question now, should WhatsApp and similar messaging platforms be banned in the workplace? We're joined now by social media expert Alan Stevens and journalist Annette Kello. Confused? Am I the only one that's a bit confused on this, guys?
Well, hard to say, Eamon. I don't know. I'm reasonably sound on this. I don't think it should be banned. It's a method of communication. I think the way it's used should be controlled, and you should get some very careful training about how you use it in a regulatory environment, of course.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Now, have you ever wondered why you don't remember your dreams despite just waking up from one?
Well, experts say that most people dream up to 6 times a night, as some are even influenced by what they've dreamt about when interacting with others.
OK, well, we're joined now by dream expert Teresa Chung. Teresa, good morning to you. This comes off the back of a survey which showed that Brits, I think 43% of Brits, said they never dream at all. What's that about?
Yeah, it's a survey conducted by Premier Inn. I'm collaborating at the moment to find out what guests are dreaming about. And obviously a good night's sleep is one of the first things that you need to remember your dreams. But yeah, 43% not recalling. And it's such a shame because I'm on a mission to get everybody to fall in love with the problem-solving power, the visionary potential, the creative potential of their dreams. And I think just listening to this interview, watching it, will potentially trigger dream recall in the morning, because one of the reasons we don't remember our dreams is we don't consider them to be important. But your night vision matters. It can really help and heal you in ways you cannot possibly dream of, forgive the pun.
Teresa, I very rarely remember my dreams, except if I happen to wake up in the middle of one, and then obviously, you know, it's still present. But it seems to me that mostly it's related to what I've been doing that day, who I've seen, and just kind of a random mix of my, you know, experiences from the previous 24 hours. Is that quite normal?
Yes, dreams are supposed to be random and illogical. One of the problems we have with people new to dream work is they try to impose reason and logic on them. But reason and logic are for the daytime. We've done enough there. You've been there, done that. When you fall asleep, you need to connect to your inner world where intuition and creativity reign supreme. And a lot of us these days squash that. We're so focused on externals, but we need a balance in our lives between external, the outside-in approach to life, getting your validation from other people, from things that you do. But for a really fulfilling life, you also need to have the inside-out approach, which is your own thoughts, your own creativity, your own decisions, your own mindset, your own reactions. And you have more control over that than you realize. People think dreams happen to them, but they don't. What you're getting every night is a beautiful symbolic reenactment of your current mindset and whether it is helping or hindering you. And you were mentioning that you do zone in on certain things. Why those things? Why did those particular things show up? Because that's where you need to apply some brainstorming insight and decode the meaning.
Teresa, we have about 20, 30 seconds left, but do you know much about lucid dreams? Because I sometimes have lucid dreams where I'm in control and I can, if I'm flying in the sky, I can control where I'm going. Any explanation behind that?
Yeah, that's knowing you're dreaming when you're dreaming. A lot of us have that as a child, and that's powerful because it shows you that you are in control of your thoughts and feelings and what you unconsciously believe. And when you are in control of that, the magic begins because you're in control of what's happening inside out. Change the world within before you try and change the world outside of you.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you so much, Teresa, for joining us.
Thanks, Teresa.
Expert Teresa Chung there.
Sweet dreams, everyone.
Thank you. Some breaking news at the end of this hour. François Bayrou is the new Prime Minister of France. The centrist politician met with President Emmanuel Macron earlier this morning. And of course, this comes after Michel Barnier's resignation after he lost a no-confidence vote last week.
Centrist. Was that expected? Are you clued up on French politics?
A little bit. I am fascinated by French politics. Every time we think it's very turbulent here, just look to France. They have it far worse.
When is
He's not going to survive, this guy.
No, the PM, the new PM.
No, well, yeah, no, the new PM, because Emmanuel Macron's got a year and a half left, I think, even though he's now deeply unpopular. He's not going to stand down. And he's going to keep appointing new prime ministers to try and get some sort of agreement between the far left and the far right, as they're known. It's not going to happen. He's going to end up with, if he doesn't choose Marine Le Pen, they're not going to end up with anybody.
Well, that was my next question to you. When is Marine Le Pen going to take centre stage and finally make...
Well, I don't think she's got any influence. Well, I don't think she's going to be appointed to anything until the next presidential election, and of course she will stand again, and we'll see what happens. But it's so polarised, these two different blocks, so I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. If you thought we had political turmoil over here, just look at France across the pond. Very quick view, Mr. Dudry, you've said... Is it just me? Ed Miliband needed £22 billion for his green vanity project, just the right amount, in a black hole before the budget. Yeah, the carbon capture scheme.
I've got to read this comment. Ben Rambo, I think that's you. Do guests have to slaughter their own meat for Christmas dinner? So instead of charging guests, you make them slaughter the turkey.
No, very funny, very funny. No, I just, yeah. Anyway, very funny. Thank you for watching today. Really appreciate your company. That's it from Britain's Newsroom. We had fun.
Yes, it's been great.
Yeah, good. I'm back tomorrow morning from 10 a.m. and up next is Good Afternoon Britain. What are you on next?
Great question. I think this programme back on Monday.
All right, we'll see you there. Thank you at home. We'll catch you next week. Have a good weekend.
Yes, how do you feel about having thousands of wind turbines near you? That's Ed Miliband's big plans, but has he got other things to worry about today? Lots of political rows brewing.
And we're also going to be discussing, is China meddling in Britain too much? And has the royal family been an unwitting level of support for them? More to come up in Good Afternoon Britain.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's been a fairly cloudy week and another pretty drab day for most. Some rain and drizzle here and there, but many places will stay dry. We are in for a change, though. This cold front is swinging its way south, and that should clear away a lot of the clouds, so many of us will be brighter tomorrow. Now, today, as I said, it is mostly cloudy, but there's some sunshine over parts of northeast Scotland, where we had a pretty harsh frost last night. Elsewhere, a lot of cloud, some rain and drizzle, southern Scotland, parts of the southwest, and there's that weather front coming in. That'll bring some wet weather across the Highlands come this afternoon and into the evening. Many places just dry and cloudy with temperatures around or a touch below average. The winds, though, are pretty light. It's going to feel quite cool, I suspect, though, with these outbreaks of rain coming into the southwest. Probably nothing too heavy, but certainly a damp afternoon for Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, parts of South Wales. Bit of light rain and drizzle further east, but a good chunk of England will stay dry. There's that weather front bringing some rain across the Highlands of Scotland. Behind it, we'll start to see the clearer skies coming in. And that will be quite noticeable as we go through tonight and tomorrow. We'll track this line of rain then as it sinks its way into southern Scotland across Northern Ireland this evening, kind of fizzling out as it does so just a little bit of light rain and drizzle for a time. And we'll continue with some patchy rain over England and Wales too, quite murky